Everyone finds their person eventually. You just have to be patient, sweetheart. That's what Hope Proctor's grandmother whispered to her every lonely night. But Hope would learn that patience meant nothing when you were invisible. When every dance, every glance, every whispered promise passed through you like you were made of glass. And on the night of the lunar gathering, when the entire pack celebrated under the full moon and she stood alone against the gymnasium wall for the 3rd year in a row, Hope understood the cruel truth. Some people were born to be chosen. Others were born to watch. She was 22 years old, a low-ranking Omega in the Silverpine pack, and she had never been anyone's first choice. Not for a dance, not for a date, not for anything that mattered. But then the doors burst open, and the Alpha King walked in, a man whose name made Alphas tremble and Omegas dream. His eyes scanned the crowded room filled with perfectly paired wolves, with their perfect smiles and perfect lives. And they landed on her. "You," he said, his voice cutting through the music like a blade through silk. "You're with me now." Hope's heart stopped, because men like Alexander Brown didn't choose girls like her. Not unless they wanted something. Not unless this was another cruel joke the universe was playing on the girl who'd been alone her entire life. Chapter 1. The Girl Against the Wall. Hope Proctor had perfected the art of becoming invisible. She stood in the corner of Silverpine High's gymnasium, her back pressed against the cool brick wall, her arms wrapped around herself like armor. The lunar gathering was in full swing, the annual dance where unmated wolves came together under the full moon, hoping to find their destined partner. String lights hung from the ceiling like captured stars, and the DJ played music that made the wooden floor vibrate with bass and possibility. Everyone was dancing. Everyone except Hope. She watched Candy Adams twirl in the arms of Spencer Swartz, her blonde hair catching the light like spun gold. She watched Elisa Waniel laugh at something Victor Nelson whispered in her ear, her hand resting possessively on his chest. She watched couple after couple move across the floor, their bodies fitting together like puzzle pieces designed by the moon goddess herself. Hope looked down at her dress, a simple navy blue thing she'd bought at the thrift store downtown. It wasn't ugly. It just wasn't enough. Nothing about her was ever enough. Still playing Wallflower. I see. Hope's stomach clenched. She didn't need to look up to know who stood before her. Layla Bautista, the pack's golden child, daughter of the Beta, and Hope's personal tormentor since middle school. "I'm just taking a break," Hope said quietly, forcing herself to meet Layla's perfectly lined eyes. "A break from what? You haven't danced once." Layla's smile was sugar-sweet and venomous. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than Hope's monthly rent, and her dark hair fell in perfect waves down her back. Behind her stood Erica Terrell and Catherine Myers, her constant shadows both smirking. "Leave me alone, Layla." "Oh, Hope. I'm just concerned." Layla tilted her head with mock sympathy. 3 years now, right? 3 lunar gatherings where you've stood against this exact wall, and no one's asked you to dance. Not once. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "Have you ever considered that maybe the moon goddess just forgot about you?" The words hit like physical blows. Hope's wolf stirred inside her, small, weak, but angry. So angry. "At least I'm not cruel," Hope whispered. Layla laughed, a bright tinkling sound that drew nearby attention. "Cruel? Honey, I'm being honest. Look around. Everyone here has found someone. Everyone, except you. Maybe it's time to accept that you're meant to be alone. Is there a problem here?" A new voice, deep, authoritative, belonging to Ray Holland, one of the pack's junior warriors. He was handsome in a conventional way, with sandy hair and kind eyes. He'd been in Hope's graduating class, but had never spoken more than 3 words to her. "No problem at all," Layla purred, immediately switching on her charm. "Just checking on our dear Hope, making sure she's having fun at the dance." The way she emphasized fun made it clear she knew Hope was having anything but. Ray's eyes flicked to Hope, and she saw at that flash of pity that was somehow worse than cruelty. At least cruelty was honest. Pity was just cruelty wearing a mask of kindness. "I'm fine," Hope said quickly. "Really?" Ray nodded slowly, clearly uncomfortable. "Okay. Well, enjoy the dance." He walked away, and Layla's mask slipped back into a sneer. "Even the nice ones can't stand to be near you too long," she said. "Come on, girls, let's leave the wallflower to her garden." They walked away, their laughter trailing behind them like poison. Hope closed her eyes and counted to 10. Then 20. Then 30. She'd learned years ago that crying at pack functions only made things worse. Weakness attracted predators, and the Silverpine pack had plenty of those. The song changed to something slow and romantic. Couples paired off, holding each other close. Hope felt her chest tighten as she watched Josh Cochran pull Darla Anthony into his arms, watched them sway together like they were the only two people in the world. What was wrong with her? Why was she never enough? She'd asked her grandmother that question 100 times before the old woman died last year. Her grandmother had always smiled and said, "Your person is out there, sweetheart. The moon goddess has a plan." But Hope was starting to think the moon goddess had forgotten to write her into that plan. She glanced at the clock. 9:45. The dance would go until midnight, but Hope couldn't take another 2 hours of this. She'd slip out, walk home, and pretend tomorrow that she'd had a wonderful time. No one would ask. No one ever did. She pushed off from the wall, weaving through the dancing couples toward the exit. The cool night air would feel good on her flushed cheeks. She could. The gymnasium doors exploded inward. Not literally. But the effect was the same. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Every wolf in the room suddenly stood at attention as a wave of pure alpha power rolled through the space like thunder. Hope froze mid-step. 3 men stood in the doorway, but only one mattered. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore all black, black shirt, black pants, black jacket that probably cost more than Hope's car. But it wasn't his clothes that made every wolf in the room submit instinctively. It was his presence. Alpha King Alexander Brown, ruler of the Northern Territories, commander of 12 packs, including Silverpine. A man so powerful that other alphas bent the knee when he entered a room, and he'd just walked into their small-town dance like a god descending from Olympus. Hope's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never seen him in person before, only in newspapers and pack bulletins. He rarely visited the smaller packs under his rule, preferring to govern from his fortress in the capital. What was he doing here? Beside him stood 2 other men, clearly his guards, both massive and dangerous-looking. But Alexander didn't need protection. The power rolling off him was protection enough. Alpha Marcus Cole of Silverpine rushed forward, his beta Francis Draper close behind. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing low. "We had no idea you'd be attending tonight. If we'd known, we would have prepared a proper welcome." "I don't need fanfare, Marcus." Alexander's voice was deep and cold, cutting through the Alpha's nervous rambling. "I'm here on business. Of course, whatever you need. I need a partner." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Every unmated female in the room suddenly stood straighter, smoothed their hair, adjusted their dresses. Hope watched Layla practically vibrate with excitement, watched Candy Adams bite her lip and push her chest forward. Alexander's eyes scanned the room slowly, methodically. Hope felt herself shrinking back, trying to disappear into the crowd. Men like him didn't look at girls like her. They looked through them. His gaze passed over Layla, over Candy, over every beautiful, perfect girl in the gymnasium, and landed on Hope. She felt it like a physical touch, those storm-gray eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her wolf sit up and take notice. Her breath caught, her skin prickled with awareness. He was looking at her, not through her, at her. Alexander crossed the room in 6 long strides, the crowd parting before him like the Red Sea. Hope's instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She was frozen, a deer in the headlights of an oncoming truck. He stopped directly in front of her. Up close he was even more devastating, sharp jawline, full lips, a small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more dangerous, not less. "You," he said. And that voice, God. That voice sent shivers down her spine. "What's your name?" Hope's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Every eye in the gymnasium was on them. She could feel Layla's hatred like heat on her back. She swallowed hard. "Hope. Hope Proctor. Hope." He said her name like he was tasting it, testing its weight. "You're unmated." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "Good." He extended his hand, large, calloused, powerful. You're with me now." The world tilted. Hope stared at his hand like it was a live grenade. This couldn't be happening. This was a dream. A hallucination. Maybe she'd fallen and hit her head on the gymnasium wall. I don't understand," she whispered. Alexander's expression didn't change. "I need a partner for the evening. You're standing alone. It's a simple arrangement." Arrangement. The word cut through her shock like ice water. Of course. This wasn't about her. This was about convenience. He needed a partner. And she was available. That's all. But every unmated wolf in the room would kill for this opportunity. To dance with the Alpha King. To be chosen, even temporarily, even as a convenience. Hope looked at his outstretched hand. She thought about 3 years of standing against the wall, 3 years of being invisible, 3 years of watching everyone else live while she merely existed. What did she have to lose? She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, firm, possessive, and Hope felt electricity shoot up her arm. Her wolf purred, a sound she'd never heard from the usually silent creature inside her. Alexander led her onto the dance floor as a new song started, something slow and haunting. The crowd watched, whispering frantically. Hope caught Layla's expression, pure, undiluted rage, and felt a small, shameful spark of satisfaction. Alexander's hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer than was strictly proper. Hope's free hand rested on his shoulder, and she was acutely aware of the solid muscle beneath her palm. "You're shaking," he observed. "You're the Alpha King," she said, as if that explained everything. It did. "And you're terrified of me." "Yes. Don't be, I won't hurt you." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was stating a law of nature. "Tell me, Hope Proctor, why were you standing alone?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "I wasn't. I was just taking a break." "You're a terrible liar." His lips quirked in something that might have been amusement. How long? How long what? How long have you been standing against that wall?" Hope's throat tightened. "Since the dance started. And before tonight?" She didn't want to answer, didn't want to admit the pathetic truth. But something in his eyes, not pity, but genuine curiosity, made her honest. "Every year, every dance. No one's ever asked me." "Why not?" "Because I'm an Omega. Low-ranking, plain, forgettable." The words tumbled out, raw and honest. "I'm the girl people look through, not at." Alexander was quiet for a moment, and they swayed to the music. Hope could feel every eye in the room still watching them, but Alexander's gaze never left her face. "You're wrong," he finally said. "About what?" "About being forgettable." His hand tightened on her waist. "I saw you the moment I walked through that door, before I saw anyone else. Do you know why?" Hope shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Because while every other wolf in this room was posturing and preening, desperate to be noticed, you were the only one who looked real, raw, honest." He leaned in slightly, his breath ghosting across her ear. "You weren't trying to be seen. That's exactly what made me see you." Hope's heart was doing dangerous things in her chest. This couldn't be real. Men like Alexander Brown didn't say things like this to girls like her. "Why are you really here?" she asked quietly. "In Silverpine. At this dance." His expression shuddered, becoming unreadable. "I told you. Business." "What kind of business?" "The kind that requires me to attend a dance and choose a partner." He spun her gently, and Hope's dress flared out. When he pulled her back in, they were closer than before. "Consider yourself chosen, Hope Proctor." The song ended. The spell broke. The crowd erupted in polite applause, though Hope could hear the undercurrent of furious whispers. Alexander released her, but his eyes never left hers. "Thank you for the dance." He turned to walk away, and Hope felt panic rise in her throat. This was it. Her Cinderella moment was over. She'd go back to being invisible, and he'd forget her name by morning. But he paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "I'll see you tomorrow, Hope." And then he was gone, his guards following, leaving Hope standing in the middle of the dance floor with her heart racing and her world fundamentally changed. Because the Alpha King had chosen her, and everyone had seen it. Chapter 2. The morning after. Hope didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment, a cramped studio above the town's only bakery, staring at the ceiling and replaying every second of the dance. Alexander's hand on her waist. His voice in her ear. You weren't trying to be seen. That's exactly what made me see you. It had to be a dream. A beautiful, impossible dream. But when her phone buzzed at 6 in the morning with 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, Hope knew it was very, very real. Most were from numbers she didn't recognize. A few were from people she barely knew, classmates from high school, distant pack members, even her supervisor at the diner where she worked part-time, all asking the same questions. What happened? How do you know the Alpha King? Are you mated now? 3 messages were from Layla Bautista. You looked pathetic out there. Whatever you did to trick him won't work for long. He'll realize his mistake soon enough. Hope deleted them without responding. She'd learned years ago that engaging with Layla only made things worse. She showered, dressed in her usual uniform jeans and a faded green sweater, and walked downstairs to start her shift at Moonbeam Diner. The morning crowd would be brutal today. Small towns thrived on gossip, and she'd just become the biggest story in Silverpine history. The moment she pushed through the diner's doors, every head turned. Ruth Lawrence, the owner and head cook, stood behind the counter with her arms crossed and one eyebrow raised. She was a large woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, and a no-nonsense attitude that had kept the diner running for 30 years. Well, Ruth said slowly, look who decided to show up. I'm not late, Hope said quietly, tying her apron around her waist. Didn't say you were. Said look who showed up. Ruth's expression softened slightly. You gonna tell me what happened last night? Or am I gonna have to hear the gossip version from Bernice Ball? As if summoned, Bernice, a middle-aged Omega who worked the morning shift, practically bounced out of the kitchen, her eyes wide with excitement. Hope! Oh my God, Hope! Is it true? Did the Alpha King really dance with you? Yes, Hope said simply, grabbing her order pad. Just one dance. Yes. And then what happened? Then nothing. He left. Bernice's face fell slightly. But people are saying he chose you, that you're going to the capital, that you're his. People are wrong, Hope interrupted gently. It was just a dance. That's all. But even as she said it, she remembered his parting words. I'll see you tomorrow, Hope. Tomorrow was today. The morning rush hit like a wave. Every table filled with pack members who suddenly remembered they desperately needed breakfast at Moonbeam Diner. Hope served coffee and pancakes while dodging questions and ignoring whispers. She was refilling Cody Wall's coffee when the diner door opened and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Layla Bautista swept in like a storm cloud, flanked by Erica and Catherine. She wore designer sunglasses despite the overcast morning, and a white coat that probably cost more than Hope made in 3 months. She removed her sunglasses with dramatic flair and scanned the diner until her eyes landed on Hope. There she is, Layla announced loudly, ensuring everyone heard. Silverpine's Cinderella. The diner went quiet. Hope kept her expression neutral, her hands steady as she finished pouring coffee. What can I get you, Layla? Oh, I'm not here to eat. Layla's smile was razor sharp. I'm here to talk. About last night. There's nothing to talk about. Really? Because the entire pack is talking about how you somehow convinced the Alpha King to dance with you. She tilted her head. What did you do, Hope? Slip something in his drink? Use some pathetic Omega charm? Or did you just throw yourself at him so desperately that he pitied you? Hope's jaw clenched. Her wolf growled inside her, that small, weak creature suddenly finding its voice. I didn't do anything, Hope said quietly. He asked me to dance. I said yes, that's all. That's all? Layla laughed, the sound brittle and cold. Honey, men like Alexander Brown don't ask girls like you to dance, not unless they want something. And trust me, whatever he wanted, he's already gotten it and moved on. Layla, that's enough. Ruth's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She stood behind the counter, her expression dark. Either order something or get out of my diner. Layla's eyes flashed with anger, but she knew better than to challenge Ruth Lawrence. Fine. But Hope? She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper only Hope could hear. When he doesn't show up today, when you realize last night was just a charity case getting a pity dance, remember that I warned you. Girls like you don't get happy endings. She turned and walked out, her shadows following. The diner slowly returned to its normal buzz of conversation. Hope's hands trembled as she set down the coffee pot. Ruth appeared at her elbow, her expression concerned. You okay, kid? I'm fine. Hope lied. You know she's jealous, right? Layla's had her sights set on the Alpha King since she was 16. Seeing him choose you must have destroyed her. He didn't choose me, not really. It was just a dance. Ruth studied her for a long moment. If you say so. But Hope? If he does show up today, and I got a feeling he might, don't let Layla's poison make you doubt yourself. You deserve good things too. Hope wanted to believe that. She really did. The morning shift ended at 2. Hope hung up her apron, collected her tips, surprisingly generous today, probably from people hoping to hear gossip, and stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. A black SUV sat parked across the street. Hope's heart stopped. The vehicle was sleek, expensive, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside. It screamed money and power and danger. As she watched, the back door opened. Alexander Brown stepped out. He wore different clothes than last night: dark jeans, a gray Henley, a leather jacket, but he was unmistakably himself, tall, commanding, utterly out of place on Silver Pine's main street. Their eyes met across the road. Hope couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process that the Alpha King was here, now, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He crossed the street in long, purposeful strides. Hope's feet finally obeyed her brain's screaming command to meet him halfway. Hope, he said, and God, her name and his voice did things to her insides. You came, she whispered. I said I would. He studied her face. Did you think I wouldn't? Hope glanced around. People were staring. Of course they were staring. I didn't know what to think. We need to talk, somewhere private. It wasn't a request. Hope's mind raced. Her apartment was a disaster. The park would have too many witnesses. There's a trail behind the diner. Woods. No one goes there this time of day. Alexander nodded to his guards, both of whom had exited the SUV and now stood at attention. Wait here. He followed Hope down the alley beside the diner and onto a narrow trail that led into the forest surrounding Silver Pine. The trees grew thick here, blocking out most of the afternoon light. The sounds of the town faded behind them. They walked in silence for several minutes, until they reached a small clearing with a fallen log. Hope had come here often as a teenager, when she needed to escape the world. Alexander stopped, his eyes scanning the area with a warrior's instinct. You come here often? Sometimes, when I need to think. What do you think about? Escape. Freedom. A life where I matter. Nothing important. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made Hope's breath catch. I'm going to be direct with you, Hope. I don't have time for games. Okay, she said cautiously. I need a mate. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Hope took a step back. What? The Council of Alphas has been pressuring me for years to take a mate and produce an heir. I've refused because I have no interest in a political marriage to some alpha's daughter who sees me as a throne to climb. Hope's head spun. I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Because last night, when I walked into that gymnasium, I had every intention of choosing someone suitable, someone from a good family, someone who understood pack politics. His jaw tightened. And then I saw you. Me. Hope repeated numbly. You. Standing against that wall, completely alone, looking like you wanted to disappear. And I thought, here's someone who doesn't want anything from me. Someone who isn't performing or pretending. He took a step closer. Someone real. Hope's heart hammered against her ribs. You want me to be your mate. I want to propose an arrangement. His tone shifted, becoming businesslike. A contract mate situation. We mate publicly, satisfy the council's demands, and present as a united front. In exchange, you get everything that comes with being the Alpha King's mate: wealth, status, protection, power. And what do you get? Freedom, the council off my back, and a partner who won't try to manipulate me or use our bond for political gain. He studied her reaction. You'd have your own quarters in the capital, your own life. I wouldn't restrict your activities or demand your constant presence. We'd appear together at official functions. But otherwise, you'd be free to do as you please. It sounded perfect, too perfect. Why me? Hope asked. Really? You could have anyone. Because you don't want to be chosen, Alexander said bluntly. Every other unmated wolf in your pack and every pack is desperate for this opportunity. They'd agree instantly, and then spend every day trying to turn a contract into something real. But you? He tilted his head. You look terrified. Like you're waiting for the catch. There's always a catch. Smart girl. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The catch is this. It would be a real mating bond. Permanent. Unbreakable. Once we complete the ceremony, you'd be bound to me for life. And while I'm offering you freedom within that bond, there would be expectations. Public appearances. Social obligations. Dealing with pack politics and council meetings. Hope's mind reeled. This morning she'd been nobody. Now the Alpha King was offering her everything she'd never dared dream of. I need time, she whispered, to think about this. You have until tomorrow night, Alexander said. I'm hosting a dinner at the capital for the regional alphas. If you agree, you'll attend as my chosen mate. If not, I'll make alternative arrangements. That's less than 2 days. I know. But the council meeting is in 3 days, and I need to present a united front. His expression softened slightly. I understand this is overwhelming. But Hope, I'm offering you a way out. Out of this small town. Out of standing against walls while everyone else dances. Out of being invisible. He was right. This was her escape. Her chance to matter. But at what cost? I'll think about it, Hope said finally. Alexander nodded. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. My private number. Call me with your decision by 8 tomorrow night. He turned to leave, then paused. Hope? For what it's worth, I think you're braver than you believe. Not many wolves would hesitate when offered what I'm offering. Maybe I'm just smarter than they are, Hope said quietly. Smart enough to know that fairy tales usually have dark endings. Alexander's smile was genuine this time. Maybe you are. He walked away, disappearing into the trees. Hope stood alone in the clearing, clutching his card, and wondered if she was about to make the best decision of her life or the worst. Hope made it back to her apartment before the panic attack hit. She collapsed on her threadbare couch, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Her wolf paced inside her, agitated and confused. The Alpha King wanted to mate with her. The most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories wanted to make her his queen. It was insane. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Layla. Heard he came to see you. Whatever he said, don't be stupid enough to believe it. Hope deleted it, then she opened her contacts and stared at the one person she trusted more than anyone. May Stokes answered on the second ring. Hope? Oh my God, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all day. May was Hope's closest friend, maybe her only real friend. They'd met 3 years ago when May moved to Silverpine from the Western Territories. Unlike everyone else in the pack, May had never treated Hope like she was invisible. I need to see you, Hope said. Now. Can you come over? I'm already on my way. 20 minutes later, May burst through Hope's door, carrying a bottle of wine and a box of cookies from the bakery downstairs. She was short and curvy with auburn hair and kind brown eyes that saw everything. Okay, May said, settling onto the couch. Tell me everything, and I mean everything. So Hope did. She told May about the dance, about Alexander, about the conversation in the woods. She told her about the offer, the contract-made arrangement, the freedom, the cost. May listened without interrupting, her expression growing more shocked with each revelation. Holy shit, May breathed when Hope finished. The Alpha King wants to mate you. Yes. And you're considering saying no? I don't know. Hope stood, pacing the small apartment. May, this is insane. He doesn't love me. I don't love him. It's a business arrangement. A business arrangement that would make you the most powerful female in the Northern Territories. But at what cost? My freedom? My identity? I'd be his trophy mate, his political prop. May studied her carefully. Is that really what you're afraid of? Or are you afraid of finally being seen? The question struck home. Hope stopped pacing. You've spent your entire life being invisible, May continued gently. Being overlooked and dismissed and treated like you don't matter. And now someone incredibly powerful is telling you that you do matter. That he chose you specifically. And that terrifies you more than anything. Tears pricked Hope's eyes. What if I'm not enough? What if I get to the capital, and I'm still just Me. Plain, awkward, forgettable me. What if everyone there sees what Layla sees, that I'm nothing special? Hope. May grabbed her hands. Listen to me. You are not nothing. You've survived 22 years in a pack that treated you like dirt. You've worked 2 jobs to support yourself since your grandmother died. You've endured cruelty and loneliness and kept your kindness intact. That's not nothing, that's extraordinary. But I'm an Omega. So am I, May interrupted. And I'm telling you right now, being an Omega doesn't make you weak or worthless. It makes you adaptable, resilient. And if the Alpha King saw something in you worth choosing, maybe it's time you saw it too. Hope wiped her eyes. You think I should do it? I think you should do what makes you happy. But Hope? Staying here, working at the diner, watching everyone else live their lives while you stand on the sidelines, does that make you happy? No. It didn't. It never had. I'm scared, Hope whispered. I know. But sometimes the scariest choice is the right one. May squeezed her hands. And hey, if it all goes wrong, you can always run away and come live with me. I'll hide you from the Alpha King. Hope laughed despite herself. He'd find me in 5 minutes. Probably. He seems like the type. May grinned. So, what are you going to do? Hope thought about Alexander's words. I'm offering you a way out. She thought about the clearing in the woods, the place she went to dream of escape. She thought about Layla's cruelty and the pack's indifference and 3 years of standing against walls. And she made her decision. Chapter 3, The Decision. Hope didn't sleep that night either. She sat at her small kitchen table, Alexander's business card in front of her, her phone in her hand. The screen showed 7:47 p.m. She had 13 minutes to make the call that would change her life forever. Or she could let the clock run out. Return to her quiet, invisible existence. Stay safe. Stay alone. Her thumb hovered over the numbers. She'd typed them in 3 times already, only to delete them and start over. Her wolf whined inside her, restless and anxious. Even the weak creature sensed this was a pivotal moment. What would grandmother say? Hope closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother's weathered hands holding hers. Remembered her gentle voice. The moon goddess gives us chances, sweetheart. Sometimes only once. And the scariest chances are usually the ones worth taking. Hope's eyes snapped open. She dialed before she could change her mind. The phone rang once. Twice. Hope. Alexander's voice was steady, unsurprised, like he'd been waiting by the phone. Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. I have conditions. A pause. Then, I'm listening. If I do this, if I agree to be your contract mate, I need to know I can still be myself. I don't want to become someone I'm not just to fit into your world. Agreed. What else? Hope's heart pounded. I want to continue my education. I never finished college. I want to go back, get my degree. Done. The capital has an excellent university, you'll have full access. And, this was the hardest part. If either of us finds our true mate someday, our real fated mate, we revisit the arrangement. I won't trap you, and I need to know you won't trap me. Silence stretched between them. Hope held her breath. That's fair, Alexander said finally. Though I should tell you I'm 32 years old. If I had a fated mate, I would have found her by now. The moon goddess doesn't always provide them, despite what the stories say. But if she does, then we revisit. You have my word. His tone shifted, became more formal. Is that a yes? Hope Proctor. Hope looked around her tiny apartment, the water-stained ceiling, the second-hand furniture, the walls that had witnessed too many lonely nights. She thought about the diner, about serving coffee to people who barely saw her, about standing against gymnasium walls while life happened to everyone else. She thought about Alexander's eyes when he'd said you weren't trying to be seen. Yes, she whispered. It's a yes. Good. She could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Pack a bag. My driver will collect you tomorrow at 4 p.m. The dinner is at 7. Tomorrow? But I don't have anything to wear to a formal dinner. I don't have. Everything you need will be provided. Just bring personal items, clothes, toiletries, anything with sentimental value. He paused. And Hope? Don't tell anyone about the arrangement. As far as the world knows, we're a genuine match. Can you do that? Yes. I can do that. I'll see you tomorrow night." The line went dead. Hope set down her phone and stared at it like it might explode. What had she just done? She'd agreed to mate the Alpha King, to become a queen, to leave everything she'd ever known. Terror and exhilaration warred in her chest. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Clayton Fisher, His Majesty's assistant. A styling team will arrive at your residence at noon tomorrow to help you prepare. Please be ready." Reality crashed over her like a wave. This was happening. Really happening. Hope spent the rest of the night packing. She didn't own much. Her clothes fit into 2 small suitcases. She carefully wrapped her grandmother's photograph, her mother's locket, the only thing she had from the woman who died giving birth to her, and a few worn books. 22 years of life packed into 2 bags and a backpack. At 11 p.m., someone knocked on her door. Hope opened it to find May standing there with tears streaming down her face and a fierce smile. "You called him," May said. "How did you?" "I know you, Hope Proctor." May pulled her into a crushing hug. "You called him and you said yes, and I'm so proud of you and so terrified for you, and oh my God, you're going to be a queen." Hope hugged her back, her own tears falling. "I'm so scared, May." "I know. But you're also brave. Braver than anyone gives you credit for." May pulled back, holding Hope's shoulders. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't disappear, that you'll call me, text me, let me know you're okay. Because if you vanish into that capital and I never hear from you again, I will march up there myself and raise hell." Hope laughed through her tears. "I promise. You're my best friend. I'm not losing you." "Good." May wiped her eyes. "Now let's have one last girls' night before you become royalty." They stayed up until 3 in the morning, eating ice cream and watching terrible movies and pretending Hope's entire world wasn't about to change. When May finally left, she hugged Hope one more time and whispered, "You deserve this. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." The styling team arrived precisely at noon. There were 4 of them, 3 women and 1 man, all dressed impeccably and carrying cases of equipment. The leader, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp features, introduced herself as Jewel Hensley. "We have 5 hours to transform you," Jewel said, assessing Hope with a critical eye that somehow didn't feel cruel. "His Majesty has requested we bring out your natural beauty, not change who you are. So let's begin." What followed was the most surreal afternoon of Hope's life. They started with a long bath infused with oils that made her skin impossibly soft. Then came a haircut, nothing dramatic, just a trim that gave her dark brown hair shape and movement. A manicure. A pedicure. Subtle makeup that enhanced her features without making her look painted. "You have lovely bone structure," Jewel commented as she applied foundation. "And your eyes, they're quite striking. Has anyone ever told you that?" "No," Hope admitted. "Well, they should have." Jewel smiled. "Don't be nervous, dear. You're going to stun them tonight." The dress arrived at 3 p.m., delivered in a garment bag by one of Alexander's guards. When Jewel unzipped it, Hope gasped. It was midnight blue, the color of the sky just before full darkness, made of silk that caught the light like water. The neckline was modest but elegant, the waist fitted, the skirt flowing to the floor. It was simultaneously simple and breathtaking. "His Majesty chose this himself," Jewel said softly. "He said blue would match your eyes." Hope's heart did something complicated in her chest. Alexander had chosen her dress, had thought about her eye color. She slipped into it at 3:45, and when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The girl staring back wasn't the invisible Omega from Silverpine. This girl looked confident, beautiful, like someone who belonged at a royal dinner. "Perfect," Jewel declared. "Absolutely perfect." At exactly 4 p.m., someone knocked. Hope opened the door to find a man in a black suit, one of Alexander's guards from yesterday. "Miss Proctor," he said formally. "I'm Israel Atkinson. I'll be driving you to the capital." Hope grabbed her bags, took one last look at her apartment, and followed him to the waiting SUV. The drive took 2 hours. Hope watched Silverpine disappear in the rearview mirror, watched the familiar forests and fields give way to highways, and eventually to the outskirts of the capital. The city was massive, gleaming towers of glass and steel, wide boulevards, parks that stretched for blocks, and at its heart, on a hill overlooking everything, stood the Alpha King's fortress. It wasn't a castle in the fairy tale sense. It was modern and imposing, all sharp angles and dark stone, with windows that reflected the setting sun like golden fire. Walls surrounded it, and guards stood at every gate. Israel drove through 3 security checkpoints before finally pulling up to the main entrance. He opened Hope's door, and she stepped out onto marble steps that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. "This way, Miss Proctor." He led her through massive double doors into an entrance hall that stole her breath. Vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. Everything screamed power and wealth and permanence. Hope had never felt more out of place in her life. Hope. She turned to find Alexander, descending a grand staircase. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, his dark hair swept back, his storm-gray eyes locked on her. He stopped 3 steps from the bottom, his expression unreadable. "You look." He paused, and something flickered across his face. "Beautiful." Heat flooded Hope's cheeks. "Thank you for the dress and the styling team. And you're nervous." He descended the final steps and stood before her. "Don't be. These are just alphas. They bleed like everyone else." "That's not comforting." His lips twitched. "It wasn't meant to be." He offered his arm. "Come. We need to talk before dinner." Hope placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, and he led her through a maze of corridors to a private office. The room was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Alexander closed the door and turned to face her. "There are things you need to know before we go in there," he said. "The Alphas attending tonight, they're my regional commanders. They've been pressuring me to mate for years. And they have opinions about who would be suitable. Let me guess, not an Omega from a small town." "Exactly." He moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He handed one to Hope. "They'll test you tonight. Subtle insults disguised as compliments. Questions designed to make you uncomfortable. They want to see if you'll break." Hope's hand tightened on the glass. "And if I do?" "You won't." He said it with absolute certainty. "Because you've survived worse than anything they can throw at you. Layla Bautista's cruelty prepared you for pack politics better than any formal training could." "You know about Layla?" "I know everything about you, Hope. I don't make decisions blindly." He took a sip of his drink. "I know about your grandmother raising you after your mother died in childbirth. I know about your father abandoning the pack when you were 2. I know about working 2 jobs to survive, about standing alone at dances, about every slight and cruelty you've endured." Hope's throat tightened. "Why? Why would you investigate me?" "Because I needed to know if you could handle this world. And everything I learned told me you could." He set down his glass and stepped closer. "You're a survivor, Hope. That's rarer and more valuable than any alpha bloodline. I still don't understand why you chose me." Alexander studied her for a long moment. "Do you believe in instinct?" Yes, I suppose. When I walked into that gymnasium, my instinct screamed at me that you were important, that you mattered. I've learned to trust that instinct. It's kept me alive through 3 territory wars and countless assassination attempts." His eyes held hers. "I chose you because everything in me said you were the right choice. Can you accept that?" Hope wanted to. But doubt whispered in the back of her mind, doubt planted by years of being told she was worthless. "I'll try," she said honestly. "That's all I ask." Alexander glanced at his watch. "It's time. Are you ready?" No. She wasn't ready. She'd never be ready. But she nodded anyway. Alexander offered his arm again, and together they walked toward the dining hall. Hope could hear voices, deep, powerful, alpha voices that made her wolf want to submit and hide. 2 guards opened massive doors, and Alexander led her inside. The dining hall was enormous, with a table that could seat 50. Tonight, only 12 places were set, 6 on each side, with 2 throne-like chairs at the head. 10 alphas stood when they entered, their conversations dying instantly. 10 pairs of eyes locked onto Hope, with varying degrees of shock, curiosity, and disapproval. "Gentlemen," Alexander said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Allow me to introduce Hope Proctor, my chosen mate. The silence was deafening. Then a man at the far end of the table, broad-shouldered with graying hair and cold blue eyes, spoke. Your Majesty, surely there's been some mistake. This is an Omega. I'm aware of what she is, Alpha Francis, Alexander said coolly. Are you questioning my choice? Francis's jaw tightened. Of course not. I'm merely surprised. We had assumed you'd choose someone of more appropriate breeding. Appropriate breeding, Alexander repeated, and his tone dropped 10 degrees. Hope comes from a loyal pack, has survived circumstances that would have broken lesser wolves, and possesses qualities I value far more than bloodline. Unless you'd like to argue that survival instinct and intelligence are less valuable than a prestigious last name. Francis opened his mouth, then wisely closed it. I thought not. Alexander pulled out Hope's chair, the one beside his throne. Gentlemen, please sit. They did, though their eyes never left Hope. She could feel their judgment like weight on her shoulders. The dinner began. Chapter 4. Trial by Fire. The first course arrived, a delicate soup that probably had a French name Hope couldn't pronounce. She picked up her spoon with trembling fingers, acutely aware that every alpha at the table was watching her. Alexander sat beside her, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. He was waiting for the attack. So was Hope. It came from Alpha Tom Gibson, a lean man in his 50s with sharp features and calculating eyes. He sat 3 seats down on the right. Miss Proctor, he said, his tone dripping with false politeness. What a delightful surprise. Tell me, what pack activities were you involved in back in Silverpine? I assume someone of your unique position must have held some responsibility. It was a trap. Everyone at this table knew Omegas rarely held positions of authority in pack hierarchies. Hope set down her spoon carefully. I worked 2 jobs to support myself, Alpha Gibson. The diner and the bakery. I didn't have time for pack politics. How industrious, Gibson said, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. Manual labor. How? Grounding. It was honest work, Hope replied evenly. I fed people who were hungry. I provided for myself without relying on pack charity or family connections. Is there something dishonorable about that? Several alphas shifted uncomfortably. Gibson's smile froze. Of course not, he said tightly. I merely meant. You merely meant to insult her, Alexander interrupted, his voice soft and deadly. And you failed. Anyone else care to try? The table fell silent. Hope's heart hammered, but she kept her expression calm. 1 down. The second course arrived, some kind of fish with vegetables arranged artistically. Hope had no idea what it was, but she ate it slowly, buying time. Alpha Rudy Snyder tried next. He was younger than the others, maybe early 40s, with red hair and a cocky smile. Your Majesty, we're all curious. How did you and Miss Proctor meet? It must have been quite the romantic encounter. I saw her at a dance, Alexander said simply. I asked her to dance. She said yes. How wonderfully simple, Snyder said, his eyes glinting with mockery. Like something from a children's story. The king sweeps in and rescues the poor Omega from obscurity. Hope's fingers tightened on her fork. She could feel Alexander tense beside her, could sense his anger rising. She spoke before he could. Is that how you see it, Alpha Snyder? As a rescue? Well, because I see it differently. Hope met his gaze directly, channeling every ounce of courage she possessed. I see a man who was tired of political games and manipulations. A man who wanted honesty for once in his life. And yes, I'm an Omega from a small pack with no prestigious connections. Which means I have nothing to gain by lying to him, or using him for power. She paused. Can everyone at this table say the same? The silence was electric. Snyder's face flushed red. Alpha Francis laughed a sharp, barking sound. She has teeth, Alexander. I'll give you that. She has more than teeth, Alexander said, his hand finding Hope's under the table and squeezing gently. She has courage and intelligence. 2 qualities in shorter supply among nobility than they should be. The dinner continued through 6 more courses. The alphas probed and tested, some more subtly than others, Hope deflected what she could and answered honestly when she couldn't deflect. Alexander watched everything, his presence beside her a constant source of strength. By the time dessert arrived, some elaborate chocolate creation, Hope was exhausted, but she'd survived. She hadn't broken, or cried, or run from the room. Then Alpha Ben Estes spoke. He'd been silent all evening, sitting at the far end of the table. He was the oldest Alpha present, maybe 70, with white hair and eyes that had seen everything. "A question, if I may," Estes said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Miss Proctor, what do you know of the Treaty of Northern Accords?" Hope's stomach dropped. She knew nothing about the Treaty of Northern Accords. She had no idea what it even was. The table waited. The trap was perfect. Expose her ignorance in front of everyone. Prove she wasn't fit to be queen. "Nothing," Hope said quietly. "I don't know what that is." Satisfaction flickered across several faces. Estes nodded slowly. "I see. And the Council of 12 Territories? The Blood Accords of 1847? The Sovereign Rights Act? I don't know any of those things," Hope admitted, her cheeks burning with shame. "I'm not educated in pack politics or history. I worked in a diner. I never had the opportunity to study governance or treaties or—" "Hope." Alexander's voice cut through her spiraling panic. He turned to face her, his expression serious but not angry. "Do you know what those treaties have in common?" She shook her head mutely. "They're all outdated, irrelevant, relics of a political system I've been working to dismantle for the past 5 years. He looked at Estes. "Isn't that right, Ben?" Estes's eyes twinkled. "It is indeed, Your Majesty. The Northern Accords were dissolved 3 years ago. The Blood Accords were abolished in 1923. And the Sovereign Rights Act was repealed before Hope was born." Alexander's jaw tightened. "So, unless my regional commanders are testing my mate with deliberate misinformation, perhaps someone would like to explain the purpose of that question." Estes smiled, genuine this time. "I was testing her honesty, not her knowledge. And she passed." Most wolves would have bluffed, pretended to know things they didn't. She admitted her ignorance immediately. "That's rare. And valuable." He raised his glass toward Hope. "Welcome to the capital, Miss Proctor. I think you'll do just fine." Several other alphas murmured agreement, though Francis and Gibson still looked skeptical. The dinner finally, mercifully ended at 10 p.m. The alphas departed one by one, some offering respectful nods to Hope, others barely acknowledging her existence. When the last one left, Hope sagged in her chair. "You did well," Alexander said. "I felt like I was drowning." "You were. But you didn't go under." He stood and offered his hand. "Come. I'll show you to your quarters." Hope let him lead her out of the dining hall and through another maze of corridors. Her feet ached in the elegant heels, and exhaustion pulled at her bones. They stopped in front of a set of double doors. Alexander opened them to reveal a suite that was larger than Hope's entire apartment. There was a sitting room with plush furniture and a fireplace. A bedroom visible through another doorway, with a bed that could fit 4 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Artwork on the walls. A chandelier that caught and scattered light like diamonds. "This is yours," Alexander said. "Your private space. There's a bathroom through that door. A walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in your size. And a study if you want somewhere quiet to read." Hope walked slowly into the room, turning in a circle. "This is too much. This is appropriate for your station." He moved to the fireplace and started a fire with practiced ease. "You'll have breakfast brought to you at 8 unless you request otherwise. My assistant Clayton will meet with you tomorrow to discuss your schedule, public appearances, university enrollment, security protocols." "Security protocols? You're the Alpha King's mate now. That makes you a target." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. "You'll have guards whenever you leave the fortress. It's not negotiable." Hope's head spun. Guards, public appearances, a target. What had she agreed to? Alexander must have seen the panic on her face, because his expression softened. "One day at a time, Hope. You don't have to learn everything overnight." "I don't belong here," she whispered. "Those alphas tonight, they saw right through me. They know I'm not qualified to be queen. They saw an Omega who stood her ground against 10 territorial alphas and didn't break. That's more qualified than half the alpha daughters they wanted me to choose. He crossed the room and stood before her. You survived tonight. That's all that matters. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow you rest, you explore your new home, you begin to adjust. His hand came up, hesitating, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And tomorrow night, we complete the mating bond. Hope's breath caught. She'd known it was coming. They couldn't present as mates without actually being mated. But hearing it said out loud made it real in a terrifying way. Hey. Alexander's voice dropped, became gentler. I told you I wouldn't hurt you. That includes this. The bond is permanent, yes. But the ceremony itself doesn't have to be. I'm not expecting anything physical beyond what's necessary to establish the bond. Do you understand? Hope nodded, not trusting her voice. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. He turned to leave. Alexander? He paused at the door, looking back. Thank you, Hope said quietly, for tonight, for defending me. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or something softer. You defended yourself, Hope. I just made sure they knew the consequences of pushing too hard. He left, and Hope was alone in her beautiful, enormous, terrifying new prison. She changed into pajamas she found in the closet silk, of course, because apparently even sleepwear was luxurious here. She climbed into the massive bed and stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from May. Tell me you survived the night. Hope smiled despite everything and typed back. Survived. Barely. Miss you already. Miss you too. But Hope, I'm proud of you. So proud. Hope set down the phone and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would explore. Tomorrow she would meet with Clayton and start learning how to be a queen. But tonight, she let herself feel small and scared and completely out of her depth. Because tomorrow, everything would change again. Tomorrow she would become Alexander Brown's mate. And there would be no going back. Hope woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover, and someone knocking insistently on her door. She stumbled out of bed, still disoriented, and opened the door to find a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and an efficient smile. Good morning, Miss Proctor. I'm Rena Arnold, your personal assistant. His Majesty thought you might benefit from having someone help you navigate your new role. She swept into the room, carrying a tray laden with breakfast. I've brought coffee, pastries, fruit, and eggs. I wasn't sure what you preferred. Thank you. Hope's brain was still foggy from sleep. What time is it? 9 a.m. You were supposed to meet with Clayton Fisher at 8, but His Majesty told him to reschedule. He thought you deserved to sleep in after last night. Rena set the tray on the coffee table and began arranging items with practiced precision. I'm here to help you with whatever you need. Wardrobe selection, schedule management, learning palace protocols. Think of me as your guide through this new world. Hope sat down, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug gratefully. I don't know where to start. Start with breakfast. Then we'll give you a proper tour of the fortress. You should know your way around before tonight's ceremony. Rena's expression turned sympathetic. I know this is overwhelming. But you're not alone. Several of us on staff are here to help you succeed. Why? Hope asked. Why would you want to help me? I'm nobody. You're the Alpha King's chosen mate. That makes you very much somebody. Rena smiled. But more than that, I've worked in this fortress for 10 years. I've seen the parade of alpha daughters and noble ladies trying to catch His Majesty's attention. Every single one saw him as a prize to be won. A throne to claim. She poured Hope a glass of orange juice. You're the first one who looked terrified instead of triumphant when he chose you. The first one who admitted what she didn't know, instead of pretending. That tells me you're here for the right reasons. I'm here because I wanted to escape my old life, Hope admitted. That's honest. I can work with honest. Rena sat down across from her. Now eat. You're going to need your strength for what comes next. The tour took 2 hours. The fortress was massive. 3 main wings, dozens of rooms, gardens that stretched for acres, training grounds where warriors practiced daily. Rena explained everything patiently, answering Hope's endless questions. They were in the library, a room that made Hope's heart sing with its floor-to-ceiling books when Clayton Fisher found them. He was tall and thin, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and an air of perpetual organization. "Miss Proctor, I apologize for the delay in meeting you. Please, call me Hope." "Hope, then." He pulled out a tablet. "We need to discuss your public schedule. The mating announcement will go out tomorrow morning to all 12 territories. After that, you'll be expected to attend various functions, charity galas, PAC meetings, council sessions." Hope's anxiety spiked. "I don't know how to do any of that." "You'll learn. Rena will coach you on protocols, and I'll brief you before each event." He tapped on his tablet. "I've also enrolled you at Capital University. You'll start classes in 2 weeks. I've selected a schedule that balances your academic interests with your public duties. You chose my classes, preliminary selections based on His Majesty's notes about your interests: literature, history, psychology, and political science. But you can adjust them as you see fit." Hope's throat tightened. Alexander had remembered what she wanted to study, had made sure it happened. "There's something else," Clayton said, his expression becoming more serious. "Your safety. As the Alpha King's mate, you're now a high-value target. There are wolves in the territories who oppose His Majesty's reforms, who see him as too progressive, too willing to change old ways." "You mean, I'm in danger?" "We all are, to varying degrees. But yes, you especially. You'll have 2 personal guards at all times when outside the fortress: Israel Atkinson and Abraham Stone. They're the best we have." Hope felt the walls closing in: guards, schedules, public appearances, danger. "I need air," she whispered. Rena touched her arm gently. "There's a private garden. Come on." She led Hope through a side door and into a courtyard hidden from public view. It was beautiful flowering trees, stone benches, a fountain that sang with falling water, and it was blessedly empty. Hope sank onto a bench and put her head in her hands. "I can't do this," she said. "I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm just a girl from Silver Pine who served coffee and stood against walls." "You were that girl," Rena said, sitting beside her. "You're not anymore. You're becoming something else. What if I fail? What if I embarrass Alexander? What if—" "Hope." Rena's voice was firm. "Listen to me. Every queen in history has felt this way at the beginning. Do you think they were born knowing how to rule? Born confident and perfect?" She shook her head. "They learned. They adapted. They grew into their roles. And you will too." Hope looked up, tears blurring her vision. "How do you know?" "Because last night, you faced down 10 territorial alphas and held your ground. Because you admitted what you didn't know instead of lying. Because you're sitting here terrified but still moving forward." Rena squeezed her hand. "That's not weakness, Hope. That's courage." Hope wanted to believe her. She really did. A guard appeared at the garden entrance. "Miss Proctor? His Majesty requests your presence in his study." Hope's heart jumped. "Now?" "Now." She followed the guard through the fortress to a wing she hadn't seen yet. He stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked. "Come in," Alexander's voice called. Hope entered to find him standing by the window, looking out over the city. He wore casual clothes today, jeans and a dark shirt, and somehow looked even more dangerous without the formal suit. "You wanted to see me?" Hope asked. Alexander turned. His expression was unreadable. "How are you adjusting?" "I'm trying. That's all I ask." He moved to his desk and picked up a small box. "I have something for you." He opened it to reveal a ring platinum, with a sapphire the color of midnight surrounded by diamonds. "The mating ring," Alexander explained. "It's tradition for the Alpha King's mate to wear it. This one belonged to my mother." Hope's breath caught. "Your mother?" "She died when I was 12. My father gave this to her when they mated." His jaw tightened. "She was the strongest wolf I ever knew. I think she would have liked you." He took Hope's hand, his touch sending that now familiar electricity through her, and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Tonight," Alexander said quietly, "we complete the bond. Are you ready?" No. She wasn't ready. But she nodded anyway, because ready or not, her new life was beginning, and there was no turning back now. Chapter 5. The Bonding Ceremony. The ceremony would take place at midnight under the full moon. Traditional, sacred, binding, Rena helped Hope prepare, dressing her in a white gown that was simpler than the dinner dress, but somehow more significant. The fabric was soft as clouds, flowing to the floor with delicate silver embroidery along the hem, ancient symbols of the moon goddess. "You look beautiful," Rena said, adjusting Hope's hair. She'd left it mostly down, with just a few braids woven through. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Hope admitted. "That's normal. Every mated wolf feels that way before the ceremony." Rena met her eyes in the mirror. "But Hope? His Majesty isn't a cruel man. He'll be gentle." Hope nodded, not trusting her voice. She knew the ceremony required a bite, Alexander marking her as his, the claiming that would forge their bond. She knew it would hurt. She knew it would change everything. At 11:30, Israel Atkinson appeared at her door. "It's time, Miss Proctor." He led her through the fortress and out into the private gardens where she'd had her panic attack earlier. But now the space was transformed. Hundreds of candles lit the pathway. White flowers bloomed despite the late season, and at the center stood a raised platform beneath an ancient oak tree. Alexander waited there, dressed in ceremonial clothes, black pants, a white shirt open at the collar, a silver circlet on his head that marked him as Alpha King. Behind him stood Clayton and a woman Hope didn't recognize, elderly, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. "That's Elder Bernice Ball," Israel whispered. "She'll officiate." As Hope approached, Alexander's eyes locked onto hers. In the moonlight, his expression was softer than she'd seen before, almost vulnerable. Hope climbed the platform steps, her legs shaking. Alexander offered his hand, steadying her. Elder Bernice began to speak, her voice carrying through the garden. "We are gathered under the full moon to witness the bonding of Alpha King Alexander Brown and Hope Proctor. This bond, once formed, cannot be broken except by death. It will tie your souls, your wolves, your very essences together for all eternity." She looked at Hope. "Do you enter this bond willingly, knowing its permanence?" Hope's mouth was dry. She glanced at Alexander, found him watching her intently. "I do," she whispered. "And you, Alpha King, do you enter this bond willingly?" "I do." His voice was steady, certain. "Then let the ceremony begin." Bernice gestured to them. "Join hands." Alexander took both of Hope's hands in his. His palms were warm, calloused from training. She could feel his pulse steady and strong. "Speak your vows," Bernice instructed. Alexander went first. "I, Alexander Brown, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, take you, Hope Proctor, as my mate. I vow to protect you, to honor you, to stand beside you through whatever comes. Your enemies are my enemies. Your joys are my joys. From this night forward we are one." Hope's turn. Her voice trembled but held. "I, Hope Proctor, take you, Alexander Brown, as my mate. I vow to stand with you, to support you, to face whatever challenges come with courage. Your burdens are my burdens, your battles are my battles. From this night forward, we are one." "The vows are spoken," Bernice said. "Now comes the claiming. Alpha, mark your mate." Alexander's hands released hers and moved to her shoulders. His eyes searched her face. "This will hurt," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "But only for a moment. Are you ready?" Hope nodded, tilting her head to expose her neck, the ultimate sign of trust and submission. Alexander pulled her closer, his breath warm against her throat. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he bit down. Pain exploded through Hope's body, white-hot and all-consuming. She gasped, her hands clutching Alexander's shoulders as her wolf roared to life inside her. The weak, timid creature suddenly blazed with power, reaching for Alexander's wolf, twining with it. The bond snapped into place like a physical force. Suddenly Hope could feel Alexander, his emotions, his wolf, his very essence, determination, strength. And underneath it all, a loneliness so deep it made her want to cry. He pulled back, his teeth releasing her. Blood trickled down Hope's neck, but Alexander immediately licked the wound, sealing it. The pain began to fade, replaced by warmth that spread through her entire body. "It's done," Bernice announced. "The bond is formed. They are mated under the moon goddess's eye." Alexander steadied Hope as her knees buckled. The world tilted and spun, the bond overwhelming her senses. She could feel his wolf, now massive, powerful, protective, circling her own smaller wolf with something like curiosity. "Breathe," Alexander murmured. "The bond settles in a few minutes. Just breathe through it." Hope focused on breathing. In, out, in, out. Slowly, the world stopped spinning. The overwhelming rush of sensation dulled to a constant awareness of Alexander's presence in the back of her mind. She looked up at him. His eyes had changed, the storm gray now flecked with gold. The wolf, showing through. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Strange. Like I'm not alone in my own head anymore." "You're not. You'll feel me now. Always. And I'll feel you." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "Welcome to forever, Hope." The ceremony concluded with traditional blessings from Elder Bernice. Clayton and Rena approached to offer congratulations. But Hope barely heard them. She was too focused on the strange new awareness of Alexander, his emotions muted but present, his wolf a constant shadow in her consciousness. When the others finally left, Alexander led Hope back inside the fortress. "You should rest," he said when they reached her suite. "The bond is exhausting the first night. What about you?" "My quarters are in the East Wing. We maintain separate spaces, remember? That was part of our agreement." He paused. "But if you need anything tonight, if the bond becomes overwhelming, just call for me. Through the bond, I'll hear you." Hope nodded. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and completely overwhelmed. Alexander turned to leave, then stopped. "Hope? You did well tonight. Better than well. I just stood there while you bit me. You trusted me enough to expose your neck, to let me mark you. That takes courage." His expression softened. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we announce the mating to the territories. After that, things will get complicated." He left, and Hope collapsed onto her bed, still wearing the ceremonial gown. She could feel Alexander through the bond, distant, but present. His emotions were carefully controlled, locked behind walls she didn't know how to breach yet. But underneath the control, she felt that loneliness again. That deep, aching solitude. The Alpha King was the most powerful wolf in the north, surrounded by thousands of pack members and allies, and he was completely alone, just like she had been. Maybe that's why he'd chosen her. Not for her strength or her bloodline or anything she could offer him politically, but because he recognized a kindred spirit, another lonely soul, standing against the wall while life happened to everyone else. Hope touched the mark on her neck, already healed, but she could feel the raised scar forming, the permanent proof of their bond. She was mated now, bound to Alexander Brown for life. And despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the overwhelming strangeness of it all, a small part of her felt relief. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't standing alone. She had a mate. A bond. A place in the world. Even if that place was terrifying. Hope woke the next morning to chaos. Someone was pounding on her door. Rena burst in without waiting for permission, her face flushed and her tablet clutched in one hand. "Have you seen the news?" she demanded. "What?" "No, I was sleeping. The announcement went out an hour ago. All 12 territories now know about your mating." Rena thrust the tablet at Hope. "And the internet is losing its mind." Hope took the tablet with trembling hands. The screen showed the official announcement, a formal photograph of her and Alexander from last night. His hand on her shoulder, her neck clearly marked. They looked almost convincing as a real couple. But below the announcement were thousands of comments. "Who is Hope Proctor? Never heard of her. An Omega? The Alpha King mated an Omega? What was he thinking? She's pretty, I guess. But hardly queen material. This is a disgrace to the Northern Territories. We deserve better. Look at her, she looks terrified. This has to be a political arrangement." Hope's hands shook harder. She scrolled through comment after comment, each one cutting deeper than the last. "She'll never survive the capital. Give her 3 months. Poor thing probably doesn't even know how to hold a fork properly. Alpha King must have lost his mind, or this is some kind of Omega charity case." "Turn it off," Rena said gently, taking back the tablet. "Comments sections are toxic. They don't matter. They all think I'm pathetic. They all think what they've been trained to think, that Omegas are weak and Alphas are strong. They're wrong." Rena sat on the bed. "But Hope, you need to prepare yourself. This is only the beginning. The scrutiny will get worse before it gets better. A knock at the door interrupted them. Clayton Fisher entered, his expression grim. There's been a development, he said without preamble. Alpha Francis Draper has formally requested a council meeting to challenge the mating. Hope's stomach dropped. Challenge it? Can he do that? Unfortunately, yes. Any council member can call for a review of the Alpha King's decisions if they believe those decisions threaten pack stability. Clayton's jaw tightened. Francis is arguing that mating in Omega weakens the bloodline and sets a dangerous precedent. When is the meeting? 3 days. And Hope? Clayton met her eyes. You'll be required to attend. To defend yourself and prove you're fit to be queen. The room spun. Hope pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe through the panic. Through the bond, she felt Alexander's presence surge concern. Anger, protective fury. I need to see him, Hope whispered. Alexander, now. Clayton nodded. He's in his study. I'll take you. Hope barely remembered the walk through the fortress. Her mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. The council would reject her, invalidate the mating, send her back to Silverpine in shame. Clayton knocked on Alexander's study door and opened it without waiting for a response. Alexander stood by the window, his phone in his hand, and his expression thunderous, but the moment he saw Hope, his features softened. Leave us, he told Clayton. The assistant left, closing the door behind him. You felt my panic, Hope said. It wasn't a question, she'd felt his response through the bond. Yes. The bond works both ways now. Alexander crossed the room to her. You've seen the comments. Heard about Francis's challenge. Everyone thinks I'm a joke. That you made a mistake. Everyone is an idiot. He said it flatly, like he was stating a fact. Francis is an old guard alpha who can't stand that I'm changing traditional power structures. This challenge has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with him trying to undermine me. But they're using me to do it. Using the fact that I'm an Omega, that I'm nobody. You're not nobody. Alexander's hands came up to grip her shoulders. You're my mate. My choice. And I will not let Francis or anyone else make you feel inferior. How do I defend myself in 3 days? I don't know pack law. I don't know politics. I don't. We train you. His voice was firm, determined. For the next 3 days, you learn everything you need to know to stand before that council and prove you belong at my side. Can you do that? Hope wanted to say no. Wanted to run back to Silverpine and hide in her apartment and pretend none of this had happened. But she'd come too far. Sacrificed too much. And something in her, that small, weak Omega, who'd spent her whole life being dismissed, was starting to get angry. Yes, she said, I can do that. Alexander's eyes flashed with approval. Good, then let's begin. The next 3 days were brutal. Alexander brought in tutors, experts in pack law, history, politics, diplomacy. Hope's days became a blur of lessons that stretched from dawn until midnight. She learned about territory rights and council procedures. She memorized the names and allegiances of every important alpha in the 12 territories. She studied precedents and protocols until her head ached. Rena drilled her on etiquette and public speaking. How to stand, how to project authority, how to respond to hostile questions without losing composure. Israel and Abraham, her assigned guards, taught her basic self-defense. If they question your strength, Israel explained, you need to show them you're not helpless. And through it all, Alexander was there, watching her practice speeches, correcting her when she got facts wrong, pushing her harder than she'd ever been pushed. On the second night, Hope broke down. I can't do this, she shouted, throwing her notes across the study. I can't remember all of this. I can't be what they want me to be. Alexander didn't flinch. What do they want you to be? Perfect, confident, someone who deserves to be queen. And what do you want to be? The question stopped her cold. What did she want? I want to be enough, Hope whispered. Just enough. Alexander moved closer. You are enough. Exactly as you are. The council doesn't get to decide your worth, Hope. Neither does Francis or the internet or anyone else. Only you decide that. How can I believe that when everyone is telling me I'm not? Because I believe it. His hand cupped her face. forcing her to meet his eyes. I chose you. Not some alpha princess. Not a political alliance. You. And I don't make mistakes about things that matter. Hope felt tears threatening. Why do you believe in me? Because I've watched you this week. You haven't quit. Haven't run. Every time you've fallen, you've gotten back up. That's not weakness. Hope. That's strength they can't teach in any academy. The bond between them pulsed with his sincerity. He meant every word. What if I fail? She asked quietly. Then we fail together. But you won't. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. You're stronger than you think. You just need to start seeing yourself the way I see you. Hope took a shaky breath and nodded. Okay, let's keep going. Alexander smiled, genuine and warm. That's my mate. They worked through the night. Hope absorbed information like a sponge, her determination overriding her exhaustion. By dawn on the third day, she was as ready as she'd ever be. The council meeting was set for 2 p.m. Hope dressed carefully in a navy suit. Rena had selected professional, elegant, but not ostentatious. She wore Alexander's mother's ring and simple earrings. Her hair was pulled back in a bun that made her look older, more authoritative. You look like a queen, Rena said, her eyes suspiciously bright. I look terrified. Queens are allowed to be terrified, they just can't show it. Rena hugged her. Go in there, and make them regret underestimating you. Alexander met Hope outside the council chamber. He wore a black suit, the silver circlet on his head marking his rank. Ready? He asked. No, but I'm going anyway. His lips twitched. That's the spirit. The doors opened, and they walked in together. The council chamber was circular, with 12 seats arranged in a semicircle and 2 thrones at the center for Hope and Alexander. Every regional alpha was present, including Francis, who watched Hope with cold satisfaction. Elder Bernice Ball presided as council speaker. She banged her gavel once. This emergency council session is called to order. Alpha Francis Draper has challenged the validity of Alpha King Alexander Brown's mating on grounds that it threatens pack stability and weakens the royal bloodline. We will hear arguments from both sides. Francis stood, his expression grave. Fellow council members, I bring this challenge not out of personal animosity, but out of concern for our future. The Alpha King has chosen to mate with an Omega, a wolf of the lowest rank, with no political connections, no education in governance, and no experience in leadership. He turned to look directly at Hope. Miss Proctor is, by all accounts, a kind young woman, but kindness does not qualify one to be queen. This mating sets a dangerous precedent and undermines centuries of careful bloodline cultivation. He sat down. Several alphas murmured agreement. Elder Bernice looked at Alexander. Your Majesty? Your response? Alexander stood, his presence filling the room. Alpha Francis speaks of precedent and tradition, but he conveniently forgets that many of our greatest leaders came from humble origins. He forgets that strength isn't defined by rank, and wisdom isn't inherited through bloodlines. He gestured to Hope. My mate has proven herself in ways none of you could have predicted. But rather than defend her myself, I believe she should speak for herself. Hope? Every eye turned to her. Hope's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment that would define everything. She stood, channeling every lesson from the past 3 days, and began to speak. Chapter 6. The Trial. Hope's legs trembled as she stood. But she locked her knees and kept her voice steady. Council members, she began, meeting each Alpha's eyes in turn. Alpha Francis is right about one thing. I am an Omega. I have no political connections. I wasn't raised in a noble household or trained from birth to be queen. She paused, letting the words settle. Several Alphas nodded, thinking she was conceding defeat. But I was raised to survive. I was raised by a grandmother who taught me that strength isn't about how loud you can growl, or how many wolves submit to you. It's about endurance, about getting up every time life knocks you down. Hope's voice grew stronger. I've worked 2 jobs since I was 16. I've paid my own rent, bought my own food, taken care of myself without pack assistance or family wealth. I've faced cruelty and rejection and loneliness, and I'm still standing. That's not weakness, that's resilience. Alpha Tom Gibson leaned forward. Resilience in a coffee shop is not the same as resilience in leading territories. You're right, Hope agreed. Which is why I've spent the last 3 days learning everything I could about pack law, council procedures, and territorial governance. Ask me anything about the Northern Accords, the Treaty of Sovereign Rights, or the current disputes in the Western Territories. Go ahead. Gibson blinked, surprised. Francis's expression darkened. Alpha Ben Estes spoke up, his elderly eyes sharp. Very well. Miss Proctor, what was the primary cause of the Eastern Territory Rebellion of 2019? Hope didn't hesitate. Economic inequality. The Eastern Territory Alphas imposed heavy taxes on lower-ranked wolves while exempting nobility. When protests turned violent, Alpha King Alexander intervened and restructured the taxation system to be merit-based rather than rank-based. The rebellion ended within 3 months. Estes nodded slowly. And what precedent did that set? That rank doesn't equal worth. That even the lowest Omega deserves fair treatment and opportunity to rise based on ability, not birthright. Hope met Francis's eyes, which is exactly why my mating threatens the old guard. Because if an Omega can become queen, it proves that the traditional hierarchy you've built your power on is obsolete. Several Alphas shifted uncomfortably. Francis's face reddened. This is absurd, he snapped. She's memorized a few facts. That doesn't make her qualified to… To what? Hope interrupted, something fierce rising in her chest. To stand beside the Alpha King? To represent the Northern Territories? Tell me, Alpha Francis, what exactly makes someone qualified in your eyes? Being born into the right family? Having the right last name? Or is it something else, something you're afraid to say out loud? Careful, girl, Francis growled. I'm not a girl. I'm the Alpha King's mate. Hope's wolf surged inside her, lending strength. And I think what really bothers you isn't my rank or my background. It's that Alexander chose me instead of your daughter. The chamber went silent. Francis's face turned purple. How dare you? It's public record that you've been pushing for a match between Alpha King Alexander and your eldest daughter Candace for 5 years. Hope continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Every council meeting, every social gathering, you've positioned her in his path. And he's rejected her. Every single time. So this challenge isn't about pack stability. It's about wounded pride. Elder Bernice banged her gavel. Miss Proctor, that's a serious accusation. It's a serious truth. Hope turned to address the full council. And if we're being honest, several of you in this room have daughters or nieces you've tried to match with the Alpha King. This isn't about whether I'm qualified. It's about whether you can accept that Alexander made a choice that doesn't benefit your political ambitions. Alpha Rudy Snyder stood, his expression conflicted. Miss Proctor makes a valid point. We've all tried to influence His Majesty's choice of mate. Perhaps we should question our own motives before questioning his judgment. Thank you, Alpha Snyder. Hope took a breath. I know I'm not what you expected. I know I don't fit your vision of what a queen should be, but I'm asking you to judge me on my actions, not my origins. Give me a chance to prove I can serve these territories well. Francis slammed his hand on the table. This is a mockery. She admits she's unqualified, then expects us to. I never said I was unqualified, Hope corrected. I said I wasn't raised for this role. There's a difference. Every queen in history had to learn. Every leader had a first day. You're not asking if I can learn, you're asking if you'll allow me to. She moved to stand before Francis's seat, refusing to be intimidated. You want to challenge my mating? Fine. But be honest about why. Stop hiding behind concerns about tradition and bloodlines. Admit that you're angry because Alexander chose someone you can't control. Someone who owes you nothing. Someone who will stand beside him as a partner, not a political pawn. Francis's eyes blazed with fury. You overstep, Omega. I'm not an Omega anymore. I'm a queen. Hope lifted her chin. And I will not apologize for being chosen. The chamber erupted in arguments, some Alphas defending Hope, others supporting Francis. Elder Bernice banged her gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Alexander had remained silent throughout, but Hope could feel his pride through the bond, his satisfaction, his fierce protectiveness. Finally, Elder Bernice restored order. Enough. The council will vote on whether to uphold or invalidate the mating. But first, I have a question for Miss Proctor. Hope turned to face the elderly woman. You speak of serving the territories well, Bernice said. What do you envision for your role as queen? What will you actually do? It was the question Hope had been preparing for, the one that mattered most. I want to create opportunities for wolves like me, Hope said quietly. Omegas who've been told they're worthless. Lower-ranked wolves who've been denied education and advancement because of their birth. I want to establish scholarship programs, vocational training, support systems for those who fall through the cracks. She looked around the chamber. Most of you were born into power. You've never known what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed before anyone knows your name. But I have, and I can reach wolves you can't reach. I can speak to struggles you've never experienced. Hope's voice strengthened. The Northern Territories are changing. Alpha King Alexander has been working to modernize our systems, to create merit-based advancement instead of birthright privilege. I can help him. Not because I'm the strongest or the smartest or the most connected, but because I understand what it means to be underestimated. And I know how to prove those people wrong. The chamber was silent now. Every alpha watched her. So yes, Hope concluded, I'm an Omega who worked in a diner. I'm young and inexperienced and I have so much to learn. But I'm also determined, resilient, and I care about wolves who've never had anyone care about them. If that's not enough for you, then your definition of enough is flawed. She sat down, her hands shaking, but her head high. Elder Bernice studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at the assembled alphas. We will vote. All in favor of upholding the mating? 6 hands rose. Estes, Snyder, Gibson, and 3 others, Alpha Josh Cochran, Alpha Victor Nelson, and Alpha Spencer Swartz. All opposed. 5 hands, Francis and his closest allies. The mating is upheld, Bernice announced. Miss Hope Proctor is recognized as the rightful mate of Alpha King Alexander Brown and Queen of the Northern Territories. This council session is adjourned. Hope felt her knees go weak. She'd won. She'd actually won. Through the bond, Alexander's emotions flooded her pride, relief, possessive satisfaction. He stood and offered his hand, pulling her to her feet. Well done, he murmured, for her ears only. That was magnificent. The council members began to file out. Some approached to offer congratulations. Estes shook her hand warmly. Snyder nodded with respect. But Francis stopped in front of her, his expression cold. You may have won today, he said quietly. But you've made an enemy, little Omega. And I have a very long memory. So do I, Hope replied steadily. And I remember every person who dismissed me, every cruel word, every time I was told I wasn't enough. So your threats don't scare me, Alpha Francis. I've survived worse. Francis's lip curled, but he walked away without another word. When the chamber finally emptied, Hope collapsed against Alexander. I thought I was going to pass out, she admitted. You were perfect, fierce and intelligent, and completely unafraid. He tilted her chin up. You didn't just defend yourself. You made them see you. Really see you. Francis hates me now. Francis hated you the moment I chose you. At least now he knows you're not someone to be trifled with. Alexander's expression turned serious. You've made a powerful enemy, Hope. That won't be easy. I know. But I also made allies. Hope thought of Estes's approval, Snyder's respect. That's something. That's everything. Alexander led her out of the chamber and through the fortress corridors. You should rest. You've been through an ordeal. I'm too wound up to rest. Hope's mind was still racing with adrenaline. Can we go somewhere? Outside the fortress? I need air, Alexander considered, then nodded. There's a place I go when I need to clear my head. Come on. He took her to the garage, a massive space filled with vehicles Hope couldn't begin to identify. Alexander chose a sleek black motorcycle. You ride? Hope asked, surprised. Sometimes anonymity is more valuable than security. He handed her a helmet. Hold on tight. Hope climbed on behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Through the bond, she felt his satisfaction at her closeness, his pleasure at her trust. They roared out of the fortress, past the security gates, and into the capital proper. Alexander drove expertly through traffic, heading north until the city gave way to forest. 20 minutes later, they stopped at a cliff overlooking a valley. The view was breathtaking: mountains in the distance, a river snaking through trees, the sunset painting everything gold and crimson. Alexander dismounted and helped Hope down. They stood at the cliff's edge in silence. "I come here when I need to remember why I do this," Alexander said finally. "All the politics, the council meetings, the endless battles, it's easy to forget the point. But up here I can see the territories. All the wolves depending on me to make the right choices, to protect them. It's beautiful," Hope whispered. "Yes, but also heavy." He looked at her. "You felt it today. The weight of responsibility. The knowledge that your words and actions affect thousands of lives. That's what it means to be queen, Hope. Not the crown or the title or the power. The weight. I don't know if I can carry it." "You don't have to carry it alone." Alexander's hand found hers. "That's why we're mated. We share the burden." Through the bond, Hope felt his sincerity. But she also felt that deep loneliness again, the one she'd noticed on their mating night. Alexander had been carrying the weight alone for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to truly share it. "Tell me about your mother," Hope said quietly. "The one who wore this ring before me." Alexander was silent for so long that Hope thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough. "Her name was Ruth. She was an Omega too." Hope's eyes widened. "What?" "My father mated her against the council's wishes 35 years ago. They fought him tooth and nail, said she was unfit to be queen." "Sound familiar?" A bitter smile crossed his face. "But my father loved her. Really loved her. Not just a political alliance. And she was strong, stronger than anyone gave her credit for." "What happened to her?" "She got sick. A rare illness that affects wolves, sometimes attacks the immune system. The healers tried everything, but..." His jaw tightened. "She died when I was 12, and my father never recovered. He ruled for another 10 years, but part of him died with her. He was just going through the motions." Hope squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry. She told me something before she died. Said that the world would always try to make me feel alone at the top. That kings are supposed to stand apart, distant and untouchable. But she said true strength comes from connection, not isolation." He looked at Hope. "I forgot that for a long time. Until I saw you standing against that wall." "Why did that make you remember?" "Because you looked the way I felt. Alone in a crowded room. Going through the motions of life without really living." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "And I thought maybe we could be less alone together." Hope's throat tightened with emotion. "Is that why you really chose me? Not because I was convenient or politically neutral, but because you were lonely?" "Yes," he said it simply, honestly, "and because I saw myself in you. The parts I'd forgotten, the vulnerability I'd learned to hide." He turned to face her fully. "This mating started as an arrangement, Hope. A practical solution to a political problem. But I'm realizing it might become something more, if we let it." Hope's heart raced. "Alexander, I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted gently. "I'm just being honest. You deserve that much. We're bound for life, whether it stays practical or becomes real. But I want you to know I see you, really see you, and what I see is someone extraordinary." The sunset cast gold across his features, softening the hard edges. Through the bond, Hope felt his emotions carefully controlled but present. Interest. Attraction. The beginning of something deeper. She'd come to the capital thinking she was entering a business arrangement, a means of escape. But standing here, looking at the Alpha King who'd chosen her when no one else would, Hope realized the arrangement was already changing into something neither of them had planned. Something that felt dangerously like real. "We should head back," Alexander said finally. "It's getting dark, and your guards will worry." They rode back to the fortress in silence, but it was a comfortable silence now. Hope held on to Alexander a little tighter, felt his satisfaction through the bond. When they arrived, Rena was waiting with news. "The announcement of the council's decision is going out tonight," she said. "Social media is already exploding. You should see this." She handed Hope her tablet. The headlines were everywhere. Omega Queen defends her crown. Hope Proctor stuns council with fierce speech. From diner to throne, the Cinderella story that's changing the North. The comments were mixed. Some still called her unqualified, but many were supportive now, especially from Omegas and lower-ranked wolves. Finally, someone who represents us. She spoke for every Omega who's been told we don't matter. Queen Hope just became my hero. Hope's eyes burned with tears. They're listening. They're more than listening, Rena said. You've inspired them. Every Omega in the 12 territories just watched you stand up to the council and win. You've given them hope. She smiled. Quite literally. Alexander touched Hope's shoulder. This is only the beginning. Now the real work starts. Hope nodded, understanding. She'd won the right to be queen. Now she had to prove she deserved it. But for the first time since leaving Silverpine, she believed she could. Because she wasn't alone anymore, she had allies. She had a mate who saw her worth, and she had a purpose to give voice to the voiceless. The way she'd been voiceless for so long. The invisible Omega was invisible no more. And she was just getting started. Chapter 7. The Queen's First Move. 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Hope's days became structured around lessons and public appearances. She attended charity functions, pack meetings, and social gatherings. She smiled for cameras, shook hands with dignitaries, and learned to navigate conversations laden with political subtext. But she also started her real work. Hope sat in her private office, a room Alexander had given her specifically for her initiatives, surrounded by proposals and budget documents. Rena sat across from her, tablet in hand, while Clayton reviewed financial projections. The scholarship fund is approved, Clayton announced. You'll have $2 million in the first year to distribute to lower-ranked wolves pursuing higher education. Hope's heart swelled. That's enough for 200 full scholarships. It's a start. But Hope, you need to understand this will be controversial. Many traditional alphas see education as something that should be earned through pack service or family connections. Those alphas can complain all they want. Hope's voice was firm. Education shouldn't be locked behind bloodlines. If we want strong territories, we need educated wolves, regardless of rank. Rena smiled, spoken like a true queen. A knock interrupted them. Abraham Stone, one of Hope's guards, opened the door. Your Majesty, you have a visitor. May Stokes from Silverpine. She says she's a friend? Hope's face lit up. May. Yes, send her in immediately. May burst through the door seconds later, her eyes wide as she took in the office. Holy shit, Hope. This is your office? This is bigger than my entire apartment. Hope laughed and ran to hug her friend. You came. I wasn't sure you'd be able to get away. Are you kidding? My best friend is the Queen. I took vacation time. May pulled back, studying Hope's face. You look different. Good different. Confident. I feel like I'm drowning most days. Yeah, but you're swimming while you drown. That's growth. May grinned, then noticed Clayton and Rena watching with amused expressions. Oh God. I'm being inappropriate in front of officials, aren't I? They're used to it, Hope assured her. Clayton, Rena, this is May Stokes, my best friend and the only person who kept me sane in Silverpine. It's an honor, Clayton said formally, though his eyes were kind. Miss Stokes, would you like a tour of the fortress? Would I? May's excitement was infectious. Hope spent the afternoon showing May around the gardens, the library, the training grounds. They talked like they used to, May filling Hope in on Silverpine gossip, and Hope sharing stories about her new life. Layla is losing her mind, May said as they walked through the rose garden. She tells anyone who'll listen that you tricked the Alpha King, that it won't last. Of course she does. Hope felt a pang of something not quite sadness, but a reminder of how far she'd come from that world. But Hope? A lot of the Omegas in Silverpine are inspired by you. They see what you've done, and they're starting to believe they can do more too. That matters. Hope's throat tightened. That's all I wanted. To show them it's possible. They settled on a bench overlooking the city. May turned serious. So, how are you really? Not Queen Hope, but Hope. Are you happy? Hope considered the question. I'm adjusting. Some days are overwhelming. The scrutiny, the expectations, the constant public performance, but I'm also doing things that matter. The scholarship fund launches next month. I'm working on vocational training programs for wolves who can't afford university. And that's not what I asked, May interrupted gently. Are you happy? I don't know, Hope admitted. I'm not unhappy. I'm just different. My whole life changed in a month. I'm still figuring out who I am in this new world. And Alexander? How is that going? Hope's cheeks warmed. It's complicated. Complicated how? The bond is real. I can feel him all the time, his emotions, his presence. And sometimes, when we're alone, there are moments where it feels like more than an arrangement. Hope twisted the ring on her finger. But then we go back to our separate quarters and our separate lives. And I remember this was supposed to be practical, not real. Does he feel the same way? I think so. Through the bond, I can sense his attraction, his interest. But he's so controlled, so careful not to push me. Like he's waiting for me to make the first move. May raised an eyebrow. And? Are you going to? I don't know if I should. What if making it real complicates everything? What if… Hope. May grabbed her hands. Listen to me. You've spent your whole life playing it safe, being invisible, not asking for what you want because you're afraid of rejection. But you're not that girl anymore. You stood up to the council. You're building programs that will change thousands of lives. So maybe it's time to be brave about your own heart too. Before Hope could respond, Israel Atkinson appeared, his expression urgent. Your Majesty, Alpha King Alexander requests your presence in the war room immediately. There's been an incident. Hope's stomach dropped. What kind of incident? An attack on one of the border towns. Western Territory. Casualties reported. Hope and May exchanged glances. I have to go, Hope said. Go. We'll catch up later. May squeezed her hand. But Hope? Think about what I said. Hope ran through the fortress, Israel and Abraham flanking her. They burst into the war room, a space Hope had never seen before, filled with maps, monitors, and tactical displays. Alexander stood at the center, surrounded by his military commanders and several regional alphas. His expression was granite hard, every inch the warrior king. Casualties? He was saying. 12 dead, 20 injured, reported a commander Hope didn't recognize. The attack was coordinated. 3 strike teams hit simultaneously the market, the school, and the pack house. Hope's blood ran cold. The school. Children. Alexander's eyes found hers across the room. Through the bond, she felt his rage carefully controlled, but burning like a furnace. Hope. Good. You need to hear this. She moved to his side, and he gestured to a map showing the Western Territory. This town Riverside was hit 3 hours ago by what appears to be a radical faction opposed to my reforms. They left a message. His jaw tightened. They're targeting changes I've implemented, including merit-based advancement and Omega rights. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Hope. They're targeting me, Hope whispered. They're targeting progress, Alexander corrected. But yes, your existence as queen has become a symbol of everything they oppose. He turned to his commanders. I want full security details on every major town, double the border patrols, and find out who's leading this faction. I want names. The commanders dispersed to carry out orders. Soon, only Hope, Alexander, and Alpha Ben Estes remained. This is worse than we thought, Estes said quietly. If they're willing to attack civilians to make a point, then we respond with overwhelming force, Alexander said flatly. No mercy for terrorists. Alexander, Hope touched his arm. Those 12 dead, were any of them children? His expression cracked slightly. 3. All under 10 years old. Hope felt bile rise in her throat. Because of me. Because I'm queen. No. Alexander turned to face her fully, his hands gripping her shoulders. Because sick wolves decided that violence was an acceptable response to change. This is not your fault, Hope. Do you understand me? This is on them. But guilt clawed at Hope's insides. 12 people dead, 3 children, because she dared to be something more than her rank. Your Majesty, Estes said carefully. There will be calls for you to step down, to prevent further violence. Francis will use this to push for the mating's dissolution. Let him try, Alexander growled. Hope stays. We don't negotiate with terrorists. But if more people die, Hope started. Then we hunt down the ones responsible and make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Alexander interrupted. Running won't save lives, Hope. It will just embolden them. Show them that violence works. He was right. Logically, Hope knew he was right, but emotion warred with logic. I want to visit Riverside, Hope said suddenly. The survivors. The families of the dead. They need to see that I care, that I'm not hiding behind fortress walls while they suffer. Absolutely not, Alexander said immediately. It's too dangerous. If they hit one town, they could hit another. You'd be a target. I'm already a target. But Alexander, don't you see? If I hide, if I let fear control me, then they've already won. I need to show those families and every Omega watching that I won't be intimidated, that I'll stand with them even when it's dangerous. Alexander's jaw worked. Through the bond, Hope felt his conflict, the instinct to protect her warring with respect for her courage. It's a brilliant move politically, Estes said thoughtfully. The optics of the Queen visiting the wounded, comforting the grieving. It would rally public support and show strength, not weakness. It's also potentially suicidal, Alexander countered. Then come with me. Hope met his eyes. We'll go together. Show a united front. Show them we're not afraid. Alexander stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Estes. Assemble a security team. We leave for Riverside at dawn. Relief and terror flooded Hope in equal measure. She was really doing this. Going to a town that had just been attacked, where people had died because of what she represented. After Estes left to make arrangements, Alexander pulled Hope aside. This is dangerous, he said quietly. I won't lie to you. There could be another attack. You could be hurt or killed. I know. And you still want to do this? I have to. Hope's voice was steady despite her fear. Those families need to know their queen cares. And I need to prove to myself as much as anyone that I'm worthy of this title. That I'll fight for the wolves who can't fight for themselves. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Pride. Admiration. And something deeper that made Hope's heart race. You're extraordinary, he said softly. Do you know that? I'm terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. His hand came up to cup her cheek. My mother would have loved you. You remind me of her, that same fierce determination to do what's right, no matter the cost. Through the bond, Hope felt his emotions: pride, attraction, and the beginning of something that felt dangerously like love. Alexander, she whispered, when this is over, when we get back from Riverside, we need to talk. About us. About what this is becoming. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I know. I feel it too. The arrangement is becoming something neither of us planned for. He smiled slightly. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Before Hope could respond, Clayton appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, the press has gotten word of the attack. They're requesting a statement. Alexander's expression hardened back into the Alpha King mask. Tell them we'll make a statement tomorrow, after we've assessed the situation in Riverside. He turned back to Hope. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. Hope nodded, but sleep felt impossible. As she walked back to her quarters, she felt the weight of 12 deaths pressing on her shoulders, and the terrifying knowledge that there might be more to come. Hope didn't sleep. Instead, she sat in her study, writing letters to the families of the 12 dead. She didn't know if they'd want to hear from her, the Omega Queen whose existence had sparked this violence. But she needed them to know she grieved too. At midnight, someone knocked softly on her door. Hope opened it to find Alexander standing there in casual clothes, sweatpants, and a t-shirt. He looked younger like this, less like a king and more like a man. Can't sleep? He asked. No. You? No. He held up a bottle. I brought whiskey. Thought you might need it. Hope let him in. They sat on the couch in her sitting room, and Alexander poured 2 glasses. To the fallen, he said quietly, raising his glass. To the fallen, Hope echoed. They drank in silence. The whiskey burned going down, but it warmed the cold places inside her. I've been thinking about what you said, Alexander finally spoke. About talking. About us. Hope's heart skipped. And I think we've been lying to ourselves. Pretending this is just an arrangement. Just a political convenience. He set down his glass and turned to face her. But Hope, I feel you through the bond constantly. Your fear, your determination, your compassion. And the more I know you, the more I realize choosing you was the best decision I've ever made. Not for political reasons. For personal ones. Hope's breath caught. Alexander, I'm not asking you to love me, he interrupted gently. I know we barely know each other. I know this started as a contract, but I'm asking if you'd be willing to let this become real. To see where this could go if we stopped holding back. Through the bond, Hope felt his sincerity, his vulnerability. The carefully controlled Alpha King was showing her his heart. I'm scared, Hope admitted. What if it doesn't work? What if we make it real and then we deal with it together? Like we've dealt with everything else. His hand found hers. I'm scared too, Hope. I haven't let anyone close since my mother died, but you make me want to try. You make me remember what it feels like to not be alone. Hope looked at their joined hands, thought about May's words, about being brave with her own heart. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's try. Let's let this be real. She met his eyes, but slowly. I need time to. Alexander kissed her. It was soft, tentative, asking permission, even as it claimed. Hope froze for a heartbeat, then melted into it. His hand cupped her face, and through the bond, she felt everything he was feeling. Desire, tenderness, relief. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Sorry, he said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. I've been wanting to do that for weeks. Don't apologize. Hope's lips tingled. I've been wanting you to. They sat there, foreheads touching, the bond singing between them with something new, something that felt like possibility. Tomorrow they would face danger. Tomorrow they would comfort the grieving and hunt the guilty. But tonight, two lonely souls had found each other in the dark. And for the first time since this had all begun, Hope felt genuinely, completely, terrifyingly happy. Chapter 8. Riverside. Dawn broke cold and gray over the capital. Hope stood in the fortress courtyard, dressed in simple but elegant clothes, dark pants, a navy jacket, her hair pulled back, no crown, no jewelry except Alexander's mother's ring. She wanted to look approachable, not royal. Alexander stood beside her, similarly dressed in tactical gear that suggested warrior more than king. Around them, 20 guards prepared vehicles and checked weapons. Last chance to change your mind, Alexander said quietly. Not a chance. Hope's voice was steadier than she felt. Israel and Abraham approached, flanking her as always. Your Majesty, we'll be in the lead vehicle with you. 6 guards front and rear, snipers on the rooftops when we arrive. We've swept Riverside twice, no additional threats detected. Yet, Alexander added grimly. Stay alert. If anything feels wrong, we evacuate immediately. Hope's safety is the priority. They loaded into armored SUVs. Hope sat between Alexander and Israel, her hands clenched in her lap. Through the bond, she felt Alexander's tension, his protective instincts on high alert, his wolf prowling beneath the surface. The drive took 3 hours. As they approached Riverside, the damage became visible. Scorch marks on buildings, shattered windows, and everywhere the lingering scent of blood and death. Hope's stomach churned. This was real. Not politics or abstract concepts. Real wolves had died here. The convoy stopped in front of what remained of the pack house, a building that had been partially destroyed by fire. A crowd had gathered, wolves from the town and surrounding areas. Some held flowers, others held signs. Justice for Riverside. We stand with Queen Hope. No more violence. Hope's throat tightened. They were here for her, supporting her. But some signs were different. Omegas don't belong on thrones. Traditional values matter. Hope Proctor equals dead children. The last one hit like a physical blow. Hope swayed slightly, and Alexander's hand immediately steadied her. Ignore them, he murmured. They're hurting and looking for someone to blame. Focus on the ones who need you. He was right. Hope took a deep breath and stepped out of the vehicle. The crowd surged forward, held back by guards. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But Hope kept her eyes forward, following Alexander toward a building that had been converted into a temporary hospital. Inside, the wounded filled cots arranged in neat rows. Healers moved between them, tending burns and injuries. The smell of antiseptic and pain hung in the air. A healer approached a middle-aged woman with exhausted eyes. "Your Majesty. Alpha King. Thank you for coming." "How many?" Alexander asked. 20 wounded still here. Most will recover, but 3 are critical." She hesitated. "And there are families who've lost loved ones. They're in the community center across the street." "I'd like to see the wounded first," Hope said quietly. "If they'll allow it." The healer looked surprised but nodded. She led them to the first cot, where a young man lay with his arm wrapped in bandages. "Ray?" Hope breathed. Ray Holland from Silverpine looked up, his face pale with pain. "Hope? I mean, Your Majesty? What are you doing here?" Hope knelt beside his cot. "Moved to Riverside 6 months ago. Got a job with the local guard." He managed a weak smile. "Never thought I'd see you again, let alone as queen. What happened to your arm?" "Shrapnel from the explosion at the market. I was on patrol, tried to help evacuate people." His expression darkened. "I got 3 kids out before the second blast hit. But there was a 4th. A little girl. I couldn't reach her in time." His voice broke. Hope took his good hand in hers. "You saved 3 lives," she said firmly. "That matters. That's heroic. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough. But Ray, those 3 children are alive, because you were brave. Their families will thank the moon goddess for you every day for the rest of their lives." Hope squeezed his hand. "I'm proud to know you. Proud that you're part of this territory." Tears slipped down Ray's face. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Hope moved to the next cot, and the next. She spoke to each wounded wolf, learned their names, their stories. She didn't offer empty platitudes or political speeches. She just listened, held hands, shared grief. Alexander watched from a few steps back, his expression unreadable. But through the bond, Hope felt his emotions surprise at her natural compassion, pride in how she handled herself, and something deeper that made her heart race. After an hour, they crossed to the community center where the families of the dead had gathered. This was harder. So much harder. Hope met parents who'd lost children, a husband who'd lost his wife, siblings, friends, pack members, all grieving, all in pain. Some welcomed her presence. Others turned away, unable to look at the Omega Queen whose existence had sparked this violence. One woman, maybe 40, with red-rimmed eyes and a black dress, approached Hope directly. "You're her. The Omega." "Yes," Hope said quietly. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Who did you?" "My daughter. Candy. She was 8. The woman's voice was hollow. "She was in the market buying bread for dinner. Just buying bread." Hope's eyes burned. "I'm so sorry." "Are you?" The woman's tone wasn't accusing, just empty. "Everyone keeps saying sorry. The Alpha King says sorry. The healers say sorry. You say sorry. But my daughter is still dead." "You're right. Sorry doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring her back." Hope's voice cracked. "And I know that my being queen, my existence, is part of why this happened. I know that, and I'm carrying that guilt. But I also know that the wolves who did this are evil. They chose violence. They chose to target children. And I promise you, I swear to you, we will find them, and they will face justice." The woman studied Hope for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and hugged her. Hope froze, then wrapped her arms around the grieving mother, both of them crying silently. "Don't let my daughter's death be for nothing," the woman whispered. "Don't let them scare you into giving up. Candy believed in you. She saw you on the news and told me she wanted to be brave like the queen when she grew up. So be that queen. Be brave enough to keep fighting." Hope couldn't speak, could only nod against the woman's shoulder. When they finally separated, Hope saw Alpha Francis Draper standing in the doorway of the community center. He watched with cold calculation, clearly waiting to see if she'd break. Hope straightened her spine, wiped her tears, and met his gaze directly. She would not break. Not here. Not in front of him. Alexander appeared at her side. We need to address the crowd outside. They've been waiting. Hope nodded. Together, they walked out to where hundreds of wolves had gathered. Camera crews had multiplied. This would be broadcast live across all 12 territories. Alexander stepped forward first, his voice carrying with alpha command, "Wolves of Riverside. Wolves of the Northern Territories. Yesterday, cowards attacked this town. They murdered innocents. They targeted the vulnerable. They did this because they fear change. They fear progress. They fear a future where rank doesn't determine worth." He paused, his expression granite hard. "They will not succeed. We will hunt them down. We will bring them to justice. And we will not allow their violence to dictate our path forward. The reforms will continue. Merit-based advancement will continue. And your queen," he gestured to Hope, "will continue to serve you with courage and compassion." He stepped back, and Hope moved forward. Her knees shook, but she kept her voice steady. "I came here today because I needed you to know that I see you, that your pain is my pain, that the 12 lives lost yesterday matter to me not as political casualties or abstract numbers, but as real wolves with families and dreams and futures that were stolen." Hope's eyes swept the crowd. "Some of you believe I shouldn't be queen, that an Omega has no place on the throne. And I understand that belief. It's what I was taught my whole life too, that I was less, that I didn't matter, that my rank defined my worth." Her voice strengthened. "But I also know that belief is a lie that keeps wolves divided, a lie that lets the powerful stay powerful while the rest of us fight for scraps. And yesterday, that lie killed children. Because the wolves behind this attack can't stand the idea that an Omega like me or like you could be more than our rank." She pointed to the crowd. "So I'm asking you, all of you, don't let them win. Don't let violence and fear make you believe the lie again. You matter. Your children matter. Your dreams matter. And I will spend every day of my reign proving that to you." The silence was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Others joined. The applause built like a wave, spreading through the assembled wolves. Not everyone, some stood silent, arms crossed. But enough. More than enough. Through the bond, Hope felt Alexander's fierce pride. They spent the rest of the day in Riverside. Alexander met with the local Alpha and Guard commanders, coordinating security measures. Hope continued visiting the wounded and grieving, offering what comfort she could. It was nearly dark when they finally prepared to leave. Hope was emotionally and physically exhausted, running on pure willpower. As they walked to the vehicles, a young girl, maybe 6, broke through the crowd and ran up to Hope. "Your Majesty," she gasped. Abraham moved to intercept, but Hope held up her hand. She knelt to the girl's level. "Hello. What's your name?" "Elisa, like the Omega who became a famous healer." The girl's eyes were wide with excitement and innocence. "My mama says you're an Omega too. Is that true?" "Yes, it's true. So I can be a queen someday too." Hope's throat tightened. "You can be anything you work hard enough to become. Queen, healer, warrior, scholar, anything you dream of." Elisa's smile was brilliant. "I'm gonna be a healer. I'm gonna save people, just like you saved us by being brave." She ran back to her mother before Hope could respond. But those words, "just like you saved us by being brave," echoed in Hope's mind the entire drive back to the capital. By the time they reached the fortress, night had fallen. Hope was so tired she could barely walk. Alexander had to help her up the steps. "You were incredible today," he said as they reached her quarters. "Every wolf there saw your strength. I cried in front of everyone. You showed emotion. That's not weakness, that's humanity. They needed to see that their queen grieves with them." He cupped her face gently. "You gave them hope today, Hope. You lived up to your name." She leaned into his touch, too exhausted to maintain any walls. 12 people are dead because of me. 12 people are dead because of terrorists. Don't take that guilt onto yourself." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But I understand the weight. I carry it too, every death that happens in my territories. We carry it together now. Through the bond, Hope felt his sincerity, his understanding, the loneliness that matched her own. "Stay," she whispered. "Tonight. I don't want to be alone." Alexander's eyes widened slightly. "Hope, just stay. Sleep beside me. I need." She struggled to find words. "I need to feel less alone." He studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But just sleep. Nothing else. You're exhausted and emotionally vulnerable. I won't take advantage of that." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you." They got ready for bed, Hope changing in the bathroom, Alexander borrowing sleep clothes that Abraham quickly provided. When Hope emerged, Alexander was already lying on top of the covers, giving her space. Hope slid under the blankets and, after a moment's hesitation, curled against his side. His arm came around her immediately, holding her close. "I met Candy's mother today," Hope said quietly into the darkness. "She told me her daughter wanted to be brave like me. But Alexander, I'm not brave. I'm terrified constantly." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear," he reminded her, echoing his earlier words. "It's acting despite it, and you do that every single day. How do you do this? Carry the weight of thousands of lives. Make decisions knowing people might die because of them. You learn to live with the guilt. You accept that you can't save everyone, but you try to save as many as you can. And on the really hard days, you remember why you're fighting." His hand stroked her hair gently. "My mother taught me that. She said rulers who don't feel the weight are dangerous. The guilt means you care. The moment you stop feeling it is the moment you become a tyrant." Hope pressed closer, listening to his heartbeat. Through the bond, she felt his exhaustion matching her own, his grief for the fallen, his determination to find those responsible. "Alexander," she whispered. I'm glad you chose me, even with everything that's happened, even with the danger and the guilt and the fear. I'm glad." His arms tightened around her. "So am I." They fell asleep like that, two lonely souls holding each other through the darkness, finding comfort in shared burdens and growing connection. And somewhere in the night, the arrangement that had brought them together quietly transformed into something that looked dangerously like love. Hope woke to sunlight, and the feeling of being watched. She opened her eyes to find Alexander propped on one elbow, studying her face. "How long have you been awake?" she asked sleepily. "An hour, maybe 2. His expression was soft, unguarded in a way she'd never seen. "You talk in your sleep." Heat flooded Hope's cheeks. "What did I say?" "Nothing embarrassing. Just, you kept saying you had to be brave. Over and over, like you were trying to convince yourself." His finger traced her jawline gently. "You are brave, Hope. You don't have to keep proving it. I feel like I do. Like the moment I stop pushing, everyone will see I'm a fraud. That I don't belong here. You belong here more than anyone." Alexander's voice was firm. "You've earned your place 10 times over. Yesterday proved that." A knock at the door interrupted them. Rena's voice called out, "Your Majesty? Clayton needs to speak with you urgently." Reality crashed back. Alexander sat up, his king mask sliding back into place. "I should go. People will talk if they know I spent the night." "Let them talk," Hope said, surprising herself. "I don't care anymore. We're mated. It's not scandalous for you to comfort me after a difficult day." Alexander smiled, genuine and warm. "Look at you, not caring what people think. I'm a bad influence. The best kind." Hope returned his smile. "Go. I'll meet with Clayton. But Alexander? Last night. Thank you. For staying. Anytime. I mean that." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief but tender, and left through the connecting door to the sitting room. Hope got ready quickly and met Clayton in her office. He looked grave. "We have intelligence on the Riverside attack," he said without preamble. "We've identified the faction responsible. They call themselves the Pure Blood Coalition, a group of traditionalist wolves who oppose the Alpha King's reforms. Where are they? That's the problem. They're scattered across multiple territories, small cells operating independently. We've located 3 members so far, but the leadership remains hidden." Clayton pulled up files on his tablet. "And Hope. They've made specific threats against you. They're planning another attack, and you're the primary target." Hope's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice steady. Then we find them first. What do you need from me? Actually, I need you to stay put. Security is being tripled. No public appearances until we neutralize the threat. No. Clayton blinked. Your Majesty, I won't hide while they terrorize innocent wolves. That's exactly what they want to make me so afraid that I stop being visible, stop being a symbol. Hope's jaw set. I have the scholarship fund launch in 3 days. I'm attending. Hope, that's suicide. The event will be public, advertised for weeks. They'll know exactly where you'll be. Good. Then they'll come for me instead of another town full of innocents. She met Clayton's shocked gaze. Set a trap, Clayton. Use me as bait. Let's end this. The Alpha King will never allow it. Then we convince him together. Hope stood. Because I'm done letting fear control my choices. I'm done letting evil wolves dictate what I can and cannot do. I'm the queen. It's time I started acting like it. Clayton stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. Your Majesty, I think you're finally growing into your crown. Don't sound so surprised. Hope matched his smile. Now let's go tell Alexander I'm planning to use myself as bait for terrorists. That should go well. Chapter 9. The Trap. Alexander's response was immediate and absolute. No, absolutely not. Not a chance in hell. They stood in his war room, Hope, Alexander, Clayton, and his top military commanders. The tension was thick enough to cut. It's the best option, Hope insisted. The scholarship launch is already planned. Hundreds of Omegas and lower-ranked wolves will be there. If we cancel, we look weak. If we proceed normally, we put them all at risk. But if we use it as a trap, then we put you at risk. Alexander's eyes flashed gold. These wolves have already murdered children. They won't hesitate to kill you, which is why we'll have every advantage. They'll come expecting a public event with minimal security. Instead, they'll walk into an ambush. Hope turned to Commander Israel. It's tactically sound, isn't it? Israel looked uncomfortable being caught between his king and queen. Theoretically, yes. We control the venue, we know the timeline, we can position assets strategically. But Your Majesty, the risk is acceptable, Hope finished. Because every day we don't stop them, they're planning their next attack. How many more riversides before we act? She has a point, said Commander Tom Gibson, one of Alexander's senior military advisors. We've been reactive. This gives us a chance to be proactive. By dangling my mate in front of killers like a piece of bait. Alexander's control was slipping, his alpha power filling the room. Several commanders stepped back instinctively. Hope didn't. She moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. Through the bond, she felt his terror raw and overwhelming. He'd already lost his mother. The thought of losing Hope too was breaking his careful control. Alexander, she said softly, for his ears only. I'm scared too. But we can't live our lives in fear. And I can't ask others to be brave if I'm hiding behind fortress walls. You're asking me to risk losing you. I'm asking you to trust me. To trust your commanders and guards. To trust that together, we're strong enough to handle this. She met his storm-gray eyes. And I'm asking you to let me be the queen I need to be. Not a figurehead you protect, but a partner who fights beside you. The room held its breath. Through the bond, Hope felt Alexander's internal war. Every protective instinct screaming to lock her away. Warring with respect for her courage and understanding of her point. Finally, he closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. If we do this, if it will be on my terms. Maximum security. Every possible precaution. And at the first sign of danger, you evacuate immediately. No arguments. Agreed. Alexander opened his eyes. And I'm there with you. Not watching from some command center. If you're bait, I'm standing right beside you. That's exactly what I want, Hope said honestly. Alexander turned to his commanders. All right, let's plan a trap. The next 3 days were a blur of strategy sessions and preparations. The scholarship launch would take place at the capital's main auditorium, a venue that seated 1,000. Commander Israel and his team mapped every entrance, exit, and potential vantage point. Snipers would be positioned on surrounding rooftops. Undercover guards would blend with the crowd. and Hope would wear a vest bulletproof, blade-resistant, enchanted with protective spells from the pack's best witches. "It's not foolproof," Israel warned as he fitted the vest to Hope's frame. "A direct headshot or magical attack could still—" "I understand the risks," Hope interrupted gently. "Thank you for being honest." Abraham Stone approached with something in his hands, a small blade with intricate engravings. "Your Majesty, I'd like you to carry this. It's silver-blessed, made by my grandmother. It won't kill a wolf, but it will incapacitate one long enough for backup to arrive." Hope took the blade carefully. "This is a family heirloom. You're family now. You're our queen." Abraham's expression was serious. "And ma'am? We won't let anything happen to you. Not on our watch." The loyalty in his voice made Hope's throat tight. "Thank you, both of you." On the night before the event, Hope couldn't sleep. She paced her quarters, anxiety churning in her gut. Tomorrow, she would stand on a stage and wait for terrorists to attack. The plan was solid, the security thorough, but there were always variables, always risks. A soft knock at the connecting door to her sitting room made her jump. "It's me," Alexander's voice called. "Come in." He entered, also clearly unable to sleep. He wore only sweatpants, his chest bare and marked with scars from years of battles. Hope had never seen him so undressed, and despite everything, her mouth went dry. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, moving to stand by the windows overlooking the city. "Too many thoughts." Hope joined him, their reflections overlapping in the glass. "Are you angry at me? For pushing this plan?" "No." Terrified, yes. But not angry. He turned to face her. "You were right. We can't let fear dictate our choices. But Hope, if something happens to you tomorrow, it won't. But if it does," his voice roughened, "you need to know that this stopped being an arrangement weeks ago. What I feel for you, it's real. Complicated and unexpected and probably foolish, but real." Hope's heart hammered. "Alexander, I'm not asking you to say it back. I just need you to know. Because if tomorrow goes wrong, I don't want my last conversation with you to be about tactical positioning and exit strategies." His hand came up to cup her face. "I care about you, Hope. More than I should. More than is probably wise." "It's not foolish," Hope whispered. "Because I feel it too. This bond, this connection. It's not just magical anymore. It's real." Alexander's eyes searched hers. "Are you sure? Or is this fear talking? Fear of what tomorrow might bring? Maybe it's both. Maybe facing danger makes you realize what matters." Hope's hand covered his, pressing his palm more firmly against her cheek. "But Alexander, when I think about the future, about the life we're building, I don't want it to be just an arrangement anymore. I want it to be real. I want us to be real." Hope. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Then he was kissing her, not tentative like before, but deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her, the feel of her, in case tomorrow stole the chance for more. Hope kissed him back with equal desperation, her hands sliding up his bare chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. Through the bond, their emotions tangled together, fear and desire, and something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. Alexander pulled back, both of them breathing hard. "Stay with me tonight. In my quarters. I need to hold you. To know you're safe for one more night." "Yes," Hope breathed. He led her through the connecting corridors to his chamber's rooms she'd never seen before. They were surprisingly simple, no ostentatious displays of wealth, just quality furniture, shelves of books, and photographs of people Hope assumed were his parents. They climbed into his bed together, and Alexander wrapped himself around her protectively. Hope pressed her back to his chest, feeling his heartbeat against her spine. "Tell me something," she said quietly into the darkness. "Something true. Something you've never told anyone." Alexander was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I'm afraid all the time." Hope turned in his arms to face him. "What?" "Everyone thinks the Alpha King is fearless, strong, unshakable. But I'm terrified constantly. Terrified I'll make the wrong choice. That I'll fail the wolves depending on me. That I'll lose someone I love again." His voice cracked slightly. "And now I'm terrified I'll lose you." Hope had never heard such raw vulnerability from him. She touched his face gently. "You won't lose me. I promise." "You can't promise that. Tomorrow is going to work. We're going to catch them. We're going to make the territory safer. And then," Hope smiled softly, "then we're going to figure out how to make this marriage real. All of it." Alexander's arms tightened around her. "I'm holding you to that." They fell asleep tangled together, stealing a few hours of peace before the storm. The morning of the scholarship launch arrived cold and bright. Hope dressed carefully in a professional but approachable outfit, a deep green dress that Rena said made her look simultaneously powerful and compassionate. The bulletproof vest went on underneath, invisible but reassuring. Abraham's blade was strapped to her thigh beneath the dress. "You look like a warrior queen," Rena said, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Be safe today, please." "I will, I promise." Hope hugged her assistant tightly. May had stayed in the capital for the event. She appeared at Hope's door just as they were leaving, her expression torn between pride and terror. "I know you have to do this," May said. "I know it's important. But Hope, if anything happens to you, nothing will happen. I have the best guards in the territories, a solid plan, and a very overprotective mate who will tear apart anyone who tries to hurt me." Hope squeezed May's hands. "I'll see you after the ceremony. We'll celebrate together." The auditorium was already filling when Hope and Alexander arrived through a secure entrance. Hope peeked out at the crowd, hundreds of Omegas and lower-ranked wolves, many with their families. They'd come from all 12 territories for this moment, to see the Omega Queen launch a program that would change their lives. She couldn't let them down. Israel did a final security sweep. "We have eyes everywhere. 3 of our agents have infiltrated deep into the Pure Blood Coalition. If they're here, we'll know. And if they attack, we neutralize them fast. You get to safety. Standard protocol." Israel met her eyes. "But Your Majesty, I've been doing this for 15 years. My instincts are usually good, and something feels off about today." Hope's stomach clenched. "Off how?" "Too quiet. We've been watching coalition movements for days. They've gone completely dark, no chatter, no movement, nothing. That usually means something big is planned, but..." He shook his head. "Just stay alert." Alexander appeared, looking every inch the Alpha King in formal attire with his crown. But his eyes found Hope immediately, checking that she was okay. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." They walked onto the stage together to thunderous applause. The crowd was on their feet, hundreds of faces looking at Hope with hope. She appreciated the irony and admiration. These were her wolves, the ones she'd promised to serve. Hope approached the podium while Alexander stood slightly behind, his presence a constant reassurance. "Thank you all for coming," Hope began, her voice amplified through the sound system. 3 months ago, I was serving coffee in a small-town diner. I was nobody, invisible, told my entire life that my rank defined my worth, and that I would never be anything more than an Omega. She paused, letting that sink in. But I was lucky. I had a grandmother who taught me that worth isn't determined by rank, that intelligence, determination, and compassion matter more than bloodlines. And when I became queen, when I was given this platform, I made a promise to myself, to use it to help wolves like me, wolves who've been told they don't matter. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. That's why I'm proud to announce the Future Leaders Scholarship Fund. Starting today, 200 full scholarships are available to Omegas and lower-ranked wolves pursuing higher education. No rank requirements. No family connections needed. Just merit, determination, and dreams. The applause was deafening. Wolves were crying, holding each other, celebrating. Hope smiled, feeling a rush of pure joy. This is just the beginning. We're also launching vocational training programs, small business grants, and the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the auditorium. Screams erupted from the crowd. Through the bond, Hope felt Alexander's instant alarm. "Hope." His hand found her arm in the darkness. "Stay close." Emergency lights flickered on dim red illumination that barely cut the shadows. And in that eerie glow, Hope saw them. 4 figures in black tactical gear dropping from the ceiling on rappel lines. They landed on the stage with military precision, weapons drawn. But they weren't attacking. They were surrounding. "Nobody move," one of them shouted. "This building is rigged with explosives. One wrong move and everyone dies." Alexander moved in front of Hope instantly, his body a shield. Israel and Abraham materialized at her sides, weapons drawn. "Let her go." Alexander's voice was pure alpha command. "Your fight is with me, not with innocent wolves." The lead attacker laughed, a cold, mechanical sound distorted by a voice modulator. "Our fight is with what you've done to our territories. And she," he pointed at Hope, "is the symbol of everything wrong, an omega on the throne, an insult to tradition." "Then kill me and let them go," Hope said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You want a symbol? Fine, I'm here, but these wolves are innocent." "Hope." "No." Alexander started. "Everyone is complicit," the attacker interrupted. "Everyone who celebrates your reign. Everyone who accepts this new progressive order. You've poisoned our territories, and now we cleanse them." His hand moved to a detonator. Hope saw it happen in slow motion. Saw Alexander lunge for the attacker. Saw Israel raise his weapon. Saw Abraham reaching for her. And she saw a young wolf in the front row, barely 16, wearing a scholarship application pinned to her shirt, frozen in terror. The attacker's thumb pressed the detonator button. Nothing happened. For a heartbeat, confusion rippled through the room. Then the auditorium lights blazed back to life, and dozens of guards swarmed from every entrance. The attackers spun, shocked, as they were surrounded. The lead one raised his weapon toward the crowd. Hope didn't think. She grabbed Abraham's blade from her thigh and threw it. The blade struck the attacker's wrist. He howled, weapon clattering to the floor. In seconds, guards had all 4 attackers pinned and disarmed. The auditorium erupted in chaos, crying, shouting, guards herding people to exits. But Hope just stood there, shaking, staring at the blade embedded in the stage floor where the weapon had fallen. She'd done that. She'd stopped him. The explosives were fake, Israel reported, appearing at Alexander's side. Props meant to terrorize. They didn't actually have the capacity to hurt anyone. But they would have shot into the crowd, Alexander said grimly, his eyes on Hope. If Hope hadn't, he turned and pulled Hope into his arms, crushing her against his chest. Through the bond, his emotions flooded her: terror, pride, relief, love so fierce it stole her breath. "Don't ever scare me like that again," he said roughly into her hair. "I didn't think. I just saw that girl and you saved lives." Again. He pulled back to look at her face. "You're extraordinary. Terrifying and extraordinary." Commander Israel approached with one of the captured attackers, the leader, unmasked now. Hope's blood ran cold. It was Alpha Francis Draper. "You," Alexander breathed, rage emanating from him in waves. "You were behind this? Behind Riverside?" Francis's expression was defiant. "Someone had to stop you from destroying everything our ancestors built. Someone had to preserve traditional values. By murdering children?" Hope's voice cut through his justifications like a blade. "By terrorizing innocent wolves? By trying to blow up an auditorium full of people whose only crime was wanting an education? You don't understand," Francis spat. "You're an omega. You'll never understand what it means to watch centuries of order crumble because one weak king fell for a pretty face." Alexander hit him. Hard. Francis's head snapped back, blood spurting from his nose. "Arrest him," Alexander ordered, his voice deadly calm. "Arrest all of them. Charge them with terrorism, multiple counts of murder, and attempted mass murder. They'll face trial before the full council." As guards dragged Francis away, he locked eyes with Hope one last time. "This isn't over. Others believe as I do. Others will be found and stopped," Hope interrupted. "Because unlike you, we don't give up. We don't let fear win. We keep fighting for a better future, no matter how many people like you try to drag us backward." Francis was hauled away, still shouting threats. Hope turned to the crowd, many still in the auditorium, refusing to leave. The young girl in the front row with the scholarship application caught her eye. Hope walked to the edge of the stage and knelt. "What's your name?" "Our Ruth," the girl stammered. "Ruth Lawrence. Like the famous healer, Ruth." Hope smiled through her tears. "You were so brave. You didn't run or panic. You stayed calm. That takes courage. You saved us, Ruth whispered. You're a hero. No. I'm just someone who refuses to let evil people win. Hope took the girl's hand. Ruth, I want you to be the first scholarship recipient. Full ride to any university you choose. Will you accept? Ruth burst into tears and nodded frantically. The crowd erupted in applause again, this time tinged with relief and joy and triumph. Hope stood and returned to the podium. Her hands shook, but her voice was strong. We were attacked today because we dared to dream of something better. Because we dared to say that rank doesn't determine worth. Because we dared to build a future where wolves like Ruth, like me, like all of you matter. She let her gaze sweep the auditorium. They wanted to scare us into submission, to make us believe that change is too dangerous, that tradition is safer than progress. Her voice rose. But we're still standing. The scholarships will still be awarded. The programs will still launch. And the Northern Territories will continue moving forward not because we're fearless, but because we're brave enough to be afraid and keep going anyway. The applause was deafening. Wolves chanted her name. Hope, hope, hope. And for the first time since this journey began, Hope truly felt like a queen. Chapter 10. The queen she became. 3 months later, Hope stood in the Capital University Library, surrounded by stacks of books and her laptop displaying a half-written essay on territorial governance. Finals week was approaching, and despite being queen, her professors showed no mercy. Your Majesty, you have a meeting with the Education Committee in 30 minutes. Rena's voice came through her earpiece. Hope sighed, saving her document. I'll be there in 20. Just let me return these books. I can send someone. Rena, I'm perfectly capable of returning my own books. Hope smiled as she gathered the heavy volumes. I'm a queen, not helpless. As she navigated the library stacks, she passed students who no longer stared or whispered. She'd become a familiar presence on campus over the past months, just another student trying to balance classwork with responsibilities. Well, her responsibilities involved running territories, but still, Hope. A familiar voice called. May appeared around a corner, her own arms full of books. She'd enrolled at Capital University too, studying social work. Please tell me you finished the governance essay. I'm drowning. Halfway done. Want to study together tonight? Can't. I have a date. May's eyes sparkled. Remember Abraham, your guard? Hope's eyebrows rose. Abraham Stone? When did this happen? Gradually. Then all at once. May grinned. Turns out brooding warriors are my type. Who knew? They walked together toward the library exit, chatting about classes and dates and normal things that made Hope's heart feel light. This was the life she dreamed of: education, friendship, purpose. How's married life? May asked as they stepped into the courtyard. Hope's cheeks warmed. Good. Really good, actually. Just good? Hope Proctor Brown, you're glowing. Something's changed. Everything had changed. After the attack at the scholarship launch, Hope and Alexander had stopped pretending their arrangement was just business. The separate quarters had been quietly abandoned. Hope now slept in Alexander's rooms every night, wrapped in his arms. We're happy, Hope admitted softly. I never thought I could be this happy. You deserve it. After everything you've been through, you deserve all the happiness. May hugged her quickly. Now go. Your meeting. I'll see you this weekend. Definitely. Hope made her way to the fortress, where the Education Committee waited. The past 3 months had been intense. Francis's trial had dominated the news, ending with him stripped of his alpha title and imprisoned for life. The Pure Blood Coalition had been dismantled, its members scattered or arrested. But more importantly, Hope's programs had launched successfully. 200 scholarships awarded. Vocational training centers opening in 6 territories. Small business grants distributed to lower-ranked wolves starting enterprises. The changes were real, measurable, making a difference. Your Majesty. Clayton greeted her at the committee room door. We have excellent news. The scholarship applications for next year are already triple what we anticipated. We'll need to expand the program. Then we expand it. Hope entered the room where 12 committee members waited, a mix of educators, former scholarship recipients, and PAC representatives. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's discuss how we make this bigger and better. The meeting lasted 2 hours, filled with passionate debate about funding, selection criteria, and expansion plans. Hope loved these meetings where real change was planned and implemented, where she could see the direct impact of her work. As it concluded, one of the representatives in Omega who'd received the first scholarship approached Hope. "Your Majesty, I wanted you to know. My sister applied this year. She's 17, always dreamed of being a teacher, but our family couldn't afford university. Because of you, she has a chance now. You changed our lives." Hope's throat tightened. "You changed your own life by working hard and dreaming big. I just opened a door. You walked through it. You gave us permission to dream." The young woman corrected gently. "That's everything." After she left, Hope stood alone in the committee room for a moment, letting the weight of those words settle. She'd done that. The invisible Omega from Silver Pine had given thousands of wolves permission to dream. Deep thoughts? Alexander's voice came from the doorway. Hope turned to find her mate leaning against the frame, watching her with that soft expression he only showed when they were alone. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a dark shirt, having clearly just finished training with his warriors. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Hope said. "We?" Alexander moved closer, pulling her into his arms. "Or you?" "Both." Hope relaxed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, his pride, his love. 5 months ago, I was standing against a wall at a dance, convinced I'd be invisible forever. And now you're standing in front of committees, changing the world. His hand stroked her hair. "I told you that you were extraordinary. You made me believe it." Hope looked up at him. "You and everyone who gave me a chance. Who saw past my rank to who I actually am." Alexander cupped her face. "I love who you are. Every stubborn, compassionate, brilliant part of you." "I love you too," Hope whispered. They'd said it before, whispered in the dark, shouted in anger, breathed in passion, but it never got old. Never stopped making Hope's heart race. Alexander kissed her softly. "Come on, I have something to show you." He led her through the fortress to a wing she didn't recognize. At the end of a long corridor, he opened a door to reveal a room that made Hope gasp. It was a library, personal, intimate, with floor-to-ceiling shelves already stocked with books. There was a reading nook with a window seat overlooking the gardens, a desk perfect for studying, even a small fireplace. "I had it built for you," Alexander said. "I know you love the university library, but I thought you might want somewhere private. Somewhere just yours." Hope walked slowly through the space, trailing her fingers over book spines. "Alexander, this is excessive? I know. But Hope, you've given up so much. Your apartment, your old life, your anonymity. I wanted to give you something back. A space that's just yours, where you can study, or read, or hide when being queen gets overwhelming." Tears pricked Hope's eyes. "It's perfect. You're perfect. Far from it. But I try. For you." He pulled her close again. "I have another surprise. But this one requires you to close your eyes." "What are you planning? Trust me." Hope closed her eyes. She felt Alexander guide her back through the corridors, downstairs, through what felt like the main entrance. Cool evening air hit her face. They were outside. "Okay," Alexander said. "Open them." Hope opened her eyes to find the fortress courtyard transformed. Hundreds of candles lit the space, their flames dancing in the breeze. White flowers bloomed everywhere, the same ones from their mating ceremony, and in the center stood a small platform with 2 chairs. "What is this?" Hope breathed. "A renewal ceremony." Alexander took her hands. "We made it out of arrangement, out of necessity. But Hope, I want to mate you again. This time out of love, out of choice. If you'll have me." Hope's vision blurred with tears. "Alexander, I know we're already bonded. I know it's permanent. But I want to make vows again, real ones this time. Ones that reflect what we've become to each other." His thumb brushed away her tears. "So, Hope Proctor Brown, my queen, my partner, my best friend, will you mate me again? Will you choose me the way I choose you?" "Yes," Hope sobbed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Elder Bernice appeared. Hope hadn't even noticed her standing nearby. "Then let's begin." The ceremony was simple. Just the 3 of them under the stars, speaking vows that came from the heart. Alexander Brown, choose you, Hope. Not because tradition demands it or politics require it, but because loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done, Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. You've made me remember how to feel, how to connect, how to be more than just a king. You've made me whole again. Hope squeezed his hands, her own vows ready. I, Hope Proctor Brown, choose you, Alexander. Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you gave me courage to become more than I thought possible. Because you've stood beside me through fear and danger and joy. Because you're my home, my partner, my love. The vows are spoken, Elder Bernice said softly, but the bond already exists. So instead of a marking, I offer you this blessing. May your love continue to grow. May your partnership continue to strengthen. May you face every challenge together, as you've done from the beginning. She left them alone in the candlelight. Alexander pulled Hope close and kissed her deep and slow and full of promise. Through the bond, their emotions tangled together until Hope couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, Alexander said. More than territories, more than crowns, more than anything. I love you too. Hope smiled through happy tears. My Alpha King, my mate, my Alexander. They stayed in the courtyard for hours, talking and kissing and making plans for their future. A future that looked nothing like the arrangement they'd started with. A future built on love. 1 year later, Hope stood backstage at the Capitol's main auditorium, the same one where the attack had happened a year ago. But today was different. Today was celebration. 5 minutes, Your Majesty, a stage manager called. Hope nodded, smoothing down her dress deep blue. The color Alexander always said matched her eyes. She wore his mother's ring, and a crown delicate silver that didn't weigh her down but marked her status. She peeked out at the crowd. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled with scholarship recipients, their families, program graduates, and wolves whose lives had been changed by the initiatives Hope had championed. May stood in the front row with Abraham, both of them smiling. Rena sat nearby with Clayton, who'd become one of Hope's closest advisors and friends. And there, off to the side, stood Alexander with his commanders, including Israel, who'd been promoted after his heroic actions during the attack. Nervous? Rena appeared at Hope's elbow. Always. But it's a good nervous now. Hope smiled. A year ago, I was terrified of public speaking. Now I do it 3 times a week. You've grown into your role. Into yourself. Rena adjusted Hope's crown slightly. Your grandmother would be so proud. Hope's throat tightened. She wished her grandmother could see this, could see the girl she'd raised become a queen. But somehow, Hope thought she knew. Wherever she was smiling. It's time, the stage manager said. Hope walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. A year ago, she'd stood on this exact spot and been attacked. Today she stood here in triumph. Good evening, Hope began, her voice strong and clear. 1 year ago, we launched the Future Leaders Scholarship Fund with 200 scholarships. Tonight, I'm proud to announce we've awarded 800 scholarships across all 12 territories. We've opened 15 vocational training centers. We've distributed 300 small business grants. And we've fundamentally changed what it means to be a lower-ranked wolf in the Northern Territories. The applause was deafening. Hope waited for it to die down before continuing. But numbers don't tell the full story. The story is Ruth Lawrence, our first scholarship recipient, who just completed her first year of medical school with honors. The story is Thomas Gibson, who used a small business grant to open a bakery that now employs 12 wolves. The story is every Omega, every lower-ranked wolf, every person who was told they didn't matter and proved them wrong. Hope's eyes found Alexander in the crowd. He watched her with such pride and love that it made her heart swell. A year ago, I stood on this stage and was attacked by wolves who feared change, who believed that tradition was more important than progress, who thought that killing and terrorizing would preserve their vision of how things should be. Her voice hardened. They failed, not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we refused to let fear win. We kept dreaming. We kept fighting. We kept building a better future. She paused, letting her words sink in. And we're not done. Tonight, I'm announcing 3 new initiatives. First, The Alpha King and I are establishing the Riverside Memorial Foundation named for the 12 wolves who died in last year's attack. This foundation will provide support to families affected by violence and terrorism. Candy's mother stood in the audience. Hope had invited her personally. They'd become close over the past year, united in grief and determination to honor the lost. Second, Hope continued, we're launching leadership training programs specifically for Omegas and lower-ranked wolves who want to serve in pack governance, because representation matters, because decisions should be made by diverse voices, not just the traditionally powerful. More applause. Hope smiled. And third, we're establishing the Northern Territories University, a fully funded institution dedicated to educating wolves, regardless of rank or ability to pay. Construction begins next month. The first class will enroll in 2 years. The auditorium exploded. Wolves were on their feet, cheering, crying, celebrating. This was more than they'd hoped for. More than they'd dreamed. Hope let the moment wash over her. This was why she'd accepted Alexander's proposal that night. Why she'd faced the council and the terrorists, and her own fear. For this, for giving wolves like her a chance at something more. When the applause finally died down, Hope spoke once more. I'm often asked how it feels to be the first Omega Queen, how it feels to break tradition, to challenge the old ways. She smiled. And I'll tell you, it feels terrifying. Every single day. But it also feels right. Because I look at this room, and I see what's possible when we stop limiting wolves based on their birth. When we start valuing merit, determination, and character over rank and bloodline. Her voice softened. 5 years ago, I was serving coffee in a small-town diner. I was invisible, forgotten, convinced I would never matter. But I mattered to my grandmother, who taught me to dream. I mattered to my best friend May, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I mattered to Alexander, who saw something in the girl standing alone against the wall. Hope's eyes found Alexander again. He was smiling, his hand over his heart. So to every wolf watching this who feels invisible, you matter. To every Omega who's been told you're not enough, you are enough. To every dreamer who's been told to be realistic, keep dreaming. Because the world changes when we have the courage to imagine something better. She paused. And then the courage to build it. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Hope stood on that stage, tears streaming down her face, feeling the weight of everything she'd accomplished, everything they'd accomplished together. When she finally left the stage, Alexander was waiting in the wings. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight. That was perfect, he murmured into her hair. You were perfect. We were perfect, Hope corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Partner, Alexander said, pulling back to look at her. In everything. In everything. Hope agreed. They walked out of the auditorium together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Because they were no longer the Alpha King and his convenient mate. They were partners, best friends, lovers. They were real. Epilogue. 5 years later. Hope sat in her personal library, the one Alexander had built for her, nursing a cup of tea and reviewing proposals for the next round of scholarship expansions. Through the window, she could see the gardens where their daughter played. Ilara was 3 years old, with Alexander's dark hair and Hope's eyes. She was chasing butterflies with the fierce determination of someone who'd inherited both her parents' stubborn streaks. She's going to be a handful, Alexander said, appearing in the doorway with their infant son Cyrus cradled in his arms. She just informed her guards that she doesn't need supervision because she's basically a queen already. Hope laughed. She's not wrong. She is a princess who thinks rules don't apply to her. But Alexander was smiling as he said it, clearly charmed by his daughter's confidence. He settled into the chair beside Hope's, adjusting Cyrus in his arms. The baby gurgled contentedly, already showing signs of his father's calm demeanor. The council approved your proposal, Alexander said. The Northern Territories University expansion. They're funding 3 additional campuses. Really? Hope's face lit up. Alexander, that's incredible. You're incredible. The council that fought your mating 5 years ago just unanimously approved your biggest initiative yet. He reached over to squeeze her hand. You've changed everything, Hope. The territories are unrecognizable from when we met. We changed everything, Hope corrected. I just gave voice to changes you were already working toward. No, you made people believe change was possible. You showed them a different way. Alexander's expression turned serious. I've been thinking about something. About succession. Hope's eyebrows rose. Succession? You're 37. That's a bit premature. Not for me. For Alara. He glanced out the window at their daughter. Traditionally, the firstborn son inherits. But Hope, I want to change that. I want to declare that succession goes to the most qualified heir, regardless of gender or birth order. Let Alara and Cyrus both have a chance to prove themselves worthy. Hope's heart swelled. That's a huge change. The council will fight it. Let them try. They've learned not to underestimate you. Alexander smiled. Besides, can you imagine Alara as queen someday? She'll be unstoppable. She'll be everything we hoped for, and more. Hope set down her tea and moved to the window, watching her daughter. A queen who was raised knowing she could be anything, who grew up seeing her mother and Omega rule territories, who learned that rank doesn't define worth. Alexander joined her, Cyrus still in his arms. What are you thinking? That we did it. We actually built the world we dreamed of, where our children can grow up believing anything is possible. Hope leaned against him. Where Alara won't ever stand alone against a wall, invisible and forgotten. No. Alexander agreed softly. She'll stand on stages, lead territories, change the world. Because that's what the daughters of queens do. Through the window, Alara caught sight of her parents and waved enthusiastically, her smile brilliant. Hope waved back, her heart full to bursting. 5 years ago she'd been nobody, invisible, convinced she'd never matter. Now she was a queen, a mother, a partner to the man she loved, a force for change that had reshaped the Northern Territories. But more than any title or achievement, Hope was finally, completely, undeniably seen. And she had been. From the moment Alexander walked into that gymnasium and said 4 words that changed everything. You're with me now. The girl who served coffee became the queen who changed kingdoms. But the real question isn't how Hope transformed, it's this. How many brilliant, capable, extraordinary people are standing invisible against walls right now, waiting for permission to matter? Comment and tell me. If you could give Hope one piece of advice at the beginning of her journey, what would it be? And more importantly, would you take that advice yourself? And please, don't forget to like this video.